God of mercy, how do I get it? Hi, Jason.
Hello, hello.
Just a sec.
Kathy, you and I are the only keeners in here. Oh, should I be able to hear you? I can't hear you at all. Is someone able to talk just to see if my audio is working? I haven't heard anyone yet.
Hi, it's Kevin.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Kevin, are you wearing a suit?
Jacket. It's cold in the office today, and I didn't want to put on a sweatshirt or something, so I'm dressing up today with a sports jacket. So.
You look good.
So when I was participating in the ERB Zoom meeting the other day, I learned something new that I could share if you guys want. If you go into your video settings, you can actually click to hide non-video participants. So then you just see the people that have their video on. Just kind of helps because I know there's probably, what we got, 14 people participating right now, and I hate seeing just the little blank square with a name. So if you just want to see people with videos, you can turn on hide non-video participants.
I just see hide self view. That's it.
Really? Under the little arrow by your video button?
Yeah.
Video
Hang on.
settings?
Oh, video. Okay.
Yeah.
Touch up my appearance. You're going to need more than HD to do that. I can tell you that.
There's some fun things to explore on Zoom.
Hide. Okay, there it is.
I think the touch up my appearance just makes you look fuzzy.
Oh.
It's like in the old Star Trek when they always used to have the blurry screen in front of the ladies.
Yeah.
Hey, oh, by the way, happy May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you.
Yep.
I was going to post my Chewbacca, but then people probably thought that was a selfie.
I was going to I have a t-shirt that says Rogue Council on it. I think you have one, don't you, Wes?
Yeah, I do actually. I was on a Zoom meeting this morning where somebody had a virtual background of the Millennium Falcon behind him, and he had, anyway, made himself up to look like Han Solo.
That's awesome.
So there you go. That's all good.
That's the one I wanted to put up, but
Aaron had a meeting the other day. He just had this wasteland from the far north Arctic in winter behind him, which
oh no,
pretty apropos right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the interesting thing is that snow was not that far from here, but we didn't get anything, right?
hey, knock on wood, buddy.
No.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta say.
What's the temperature right now?
5.
degrees.
Yeah.
I still think we're going to get a foot of snow on May long weekend.
Atta girl.
Oh, oh well,
Perfect. Good job.
exactly.
I want to go down the river this week.
Without a paddle?
You know, Kathy, you're not a real paddler until you've paddled in snow and hail. I've done both. So there you go.
Oh my God, look at Ray. He's got a bow tie. He's got a tuxedo on.
I can't see
I hear you,
Ray.
Ray.
I said I've dressed
Oh,
up for all you guys and the city of St. Albert. Actually,
I'm
have
enjoying David's COVID beard.
I actually have a whole suit on. Yeah, the beard's getting pretty long. White.
Are you sure you have the pants on or you just got shorts on? Yeah, there you go. David.
You look hot.
Well, were you out stealing cars again?
No, I got up and dressed up for the city of St. Albert and you guys.
I just thought you were doing your
What's
thing
all
where
this
you
smile
do,
about?
where you
Put a little
take,
smile on your face.
Well, it worked.
There you go.
I
have
have
nowhere
a
to go.
skirt and a blazer on, but I still have my slippers on from this morning. You know what? Who do we have from Ledge? Whoever's in charge of organizing the in-camera session, I remember seeing it, but I can't find it. My invite to the Teams meeting. So can someone resend it to me?
We'll get that sent out right away.
Thanks. I don't need
David's
to participate, but. Hi, Anna. Okay, it's 2 o'clock. I'm gonna start the meeting. So calling, are we live streaming now? It says live on YouTube, so we're good. Thanks, guys. All right, so Monday, May 4th, 2020. May the 4th be with you. Attendance at the start of the meeting is Councillor Hughes here. Has anyone seen her? Walk-ins, I do not see her. Hopefully she's joining us right. Oh, I see her.
You should be there.
Can you turn on your video, Councillor Hughes, so we can see you? Councillor Hughes?
It says she's trying to connect to the audio.
Okay. All right, well, we'll count her as here for now. We can do that, right, David?
Yes,
Can't hear you, David. David, is that a yes?
yes,
Oh,
yeah, I think she's there now. I think we're
She's
fine.
there now. Okay. All right. So attendance is 100%. So the agenda, we have number 3 is presentations, and we do have our poet who is waiting in the lobby or whatever we call it. But we won't be actually hearing from Julia till after 7.1, which is the approval of the new poet laureate. So we'll actually make that motion and then she can come on and say a few words. So just that one little minor change in the agenda. And does anyone else have anything else they need to add? Okay. All right. So can I have a member of council make a motion to adopt the agenda with that slight change? Go ahead, Councillor Mackay.
I just want to clarify, I think there was a couple of other ones? I think Natalie wanted to pull one off of consent.
Yeah, when we get to consent, but the order of the agenda is still the same. Yeah.
All right, gotcha. Then I can make the motion, Madam Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
That the May 4th, 2020 agenda be adopted as amended.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. The other interesting thing, Ledge Services on the EMRB Friday meeting, when you clicked on participants, there was actually a yes and no button. So you could actually do electronic voting and you could probably record votes if we wanted to investigate that option for future meetings, just to be consistent. Okay, so consent agenda, we have had just one thing pulled, which is 7.5. Is that correct? Yeah. So can I actually, now that you pulled it, so can I get you to make the motion to do consent without that one item?
Yeah, I'm just looking for it here. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through. So that no. Sorry, it's tricky going through a bunch of different screens here.
Yeah.
Okay, that the recommendations in the following agenda reports be approved. 5.1, regular council meeting minutes of April 6, 2020, and special council meeting minutes of April 14, 2020. 6.1 CSAC and EAC recommendations, community recognition programs, CCSO3 approved. And 8.1 bylaw 10 2020 Riverside Stage 27 redistricting, first reading.
All right, thank you. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that is unanimous. Okay, so the adoption of the minutes from April 6 and 14 were just approved on consent. And then the next one is the Community Service Advisory Committee and the Environmental Advisory Committee recommendations on the community recognition programs. So the following motion was just approved on consent, that the following nominees receive a 2020 City of St. Albert Community Recognition Award. Dolores Andresen in the category of Environmental Stewardship, Krista Monson in the category of Distinguished Achievement, and Nancy Watt in the category of Arts, Music, and Culture. So congratulations to all those new inductees, and we will probably, Anna, when are we going to celebrate that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we'll celebrate that in the fall when we can maybe join together in a more formal manner. So
Okay.
again, sometime in the fall.
Okay, thanks. We will, yeah, I think we want to do it as a community instead of over video conferencing. All right, moving on to 7.1, approval of the new poet laureate. Is there any presentation on this one? I've got down Paul Pearson from Culture and Business Events Manager. Is Paul around? Is he making a presentation?
I am here, Madam Mayor, and I can make a brief presentation.
Go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. Pleasure to be with you. On March 24th, the Poet Laureate Selection Panel was convened digitally by the St. Albert Public Library to evaluate the 3 applications received for the position of Poet Laureate. The panel was made up of 3 professionals with literary arts backgrounds and no conflicts of interest with the nominees. Due to the unique circumstances created by the COVID-19 situation, the selection panel deliberated over email. The selection panel was organized and monitored by St. Albert Public Library representative and the community cultural coordinator, who are non-voting members. Nominees were assessed on 4 main criteria: clear and innovative ideas regarding the vision for the position of the Poet Laureate, a demonstrated ability to engage and inspire the St. Albert community, ease and skill at presenting and performing work to the public, and finally, a body of literary work of superior artistic merit. As I mentioned, 3 applications were received. Out of those applications, the selection panel was unanimous in its choice of a young poet who was born and raised in St. Albert. I could go on. I've got some biographical information, but I don't want to steal your thunder, Madam Mayor, in announcing the name of the Poet Laureate. So I can just stop there if you'd like.
Thanks, Paul. Although I don't think there's much of a secret, because this agenda was published publicly earlier on Friday, and then I put it on Facebook. So I'm excited that Julia Sorensen will be our new Poet Laureate. I don't know if any of you have met Julia before. She was part of the Mayor's Celebration of the Arts a couple of years ago, and she's a fantastic young lady, and I'm sure she'll be, actually, Cheryl, why don't we bring her in now?
She's there now.
There she comes. Hi, Julia. Oh, let's let her audio connect. Hi, Julia.
Aha, okay, I'm finally unmuted. Hello.
How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. We're just talking about you, so I thought we better bring you in.
Okay.
Paul just gave us a little bit of an introduction of how the selection process was done. And I just had mentioned that I met you at the Mayor's Celebration of the Arts a couple years ago, and you performed, and it was fabulous. Paul, did you have a bio there?
I do have a brief bio that I can share with you. So as I mentioned, Julie was born and raised in St. Albert, and she's currently finishing her 4th and final year of an English degree at the University of Alberta. Hopefully that's been going well, given the current situation. Julie has had poems published in a number of magazines and chapbooks, including Amplify's multidisciplinary anthology in 2017, She's also performed at a number of festivals and spoken word events, including the Mayor's Celebration. She's also appeared as the local celebrity panelist at St. Albert's Canada Reads at the library back in March 2018.
That's my favorite title. That's my favorite title.
She's won numerous awards and scholarships and continues to give back to her community by doing things like facilitating Culture Days workshops in St. Albert and being the coach for Paul Kane High School's PK Poets. Again, as I mentioned, the Poet Laureate Selection Panel unanimously recommends that Julia Sorensen be named the St. Albert Poet Laureate for a 2-year term commencing April 2020 and ending in April 2022.
Thank you. Excellent. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask one of the members of council to make the motion and we can approve that first. And then I'm going to invite Julia. I think you have something prepared for us, Julia?
I do.
Okay. And I saw Natalie's hand pop up as fast as she could get it there. So go ahead.
I think I'm the arts nerd on council. So that Julia Sorensen be appointed at St. Albert as St. Albert's Poet Laureate for a 2-year term commencing May 2020 and ending April 2022.
Right. Any opening comments on that, Councillor Jolly?
You know what, I just private messaged Julia and I said, did we meet at an Edmonton Arts Council event? And she said she confirmed that we did. I'm better at faces than names, but Julia is really involved in the arts community in the whole region. And I think that is so important for our young artists. So I'm really proud that Julia was selected for this, and I'm excited to see her as our poet laureate for the next couple of years. You know, you were a delight to chat with. The very last event that I went to before everything shut down was an Edmonton Arts Council event. That was probably your last event too as well, Julia. So I look forward to things opening up again and being able to hear you present many more times. So thank you.
Anyone else on council want to add anything? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate you also. And I just had to ask you a question. Are you related to Carl Sorensen?
I'm not.
Okay, so he's.
I don't even think that's the first time I've gotten that question either.
He lived in St. Albert for a very long time. Okay, congratulations. That's all I had, Madam Mayor.
I'm seeing a thumbs up from Councillor Hanson. Yeah, this is always an exciting part of our agenda. So I'll just welcome you, Julia. Zach was a great first Poet Laureate, and I think probably there's some opportunities to even take this into a higher level and have you participate more often. I think there's the reason that the city wants to do this is to really connect part of our culture, which is the expression of arts in its various forms, and that has to involve poetry. So, you know, all the ideas and issues that face St. Albert, whether they are positive or negative, can always be expressed through poetry, sometimes better than just regular spoken language. So I hope to lean on you for some help in our communications with the public. So anyway, congratulations.
Thank you. And thanks. I also look forward to that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's been really, really awesome to watch Zach begin this legacy. And I also had the opportunity to work with him a couple times, which was really great. I think we're fairly good friends, and we've put together grant applications together and things like that. Another thing I would like to say is that I have graduated. I'm no longer a student.
Yay.
So if there are people watching this that are like, what, really?
What's taking so long?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to bringing poetry to St. Albert in a broader sense than I was before, and also bringing St. Albert's poetry. Yeah, the only thing that I have to say is a poem that I wrote.
Okay, hold on for 1 second.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Take the vote just to make it official.
Oh, right.
No problem.
Yes. Robert's Rules of Order.
Close the debate.
I'm delighted.
Okay.
That's all I have. I look forward to the poem.
All right, call for the vote. Hands up. So that is 7 hands. That's unanimous. So now I'm really going to turn the floor over to you, Julia. Let's hear some of your words.
Thank you. Sorry for being too hasty. Recently, I had a conversation with a friend of mine about how it feels like we're all dreaming more vividly than usual. And I wasn't sure about that because I always forget my dreams. whether that's a good or bad thing. But coincidentally, I then came upon a New York Times article about how people tend to dream more vividly during crisis. And I was very inspired by that. And so I wrote this poem. When your eyes open wide, you are a goldfish who wiggles through your few rooms, nudging your nose to the glass with familiarity. You are a bat peeking through your wings, wondering whether it's light out yet, whether you shirked instinct long enough to sleep through the darkness. But when your eyes close tight, you are a forester who drinks coffee and watches the trees in their growing. You have a garden with gooseberries and peonies for humor and folly, and when the fall hits, you hurry home to the sea. Then suddenly you are a fisherman who drops massive sedatives into monsters' mouths when they wake to swallow your sails. You spend days on deck and nights down below in a hard double bed fastened to the floor, and you are alone, but happy. Then you become a rich widow who sips creamed Pico tea and eats glazed scones in the mornings. You attend in the evenings intelligent plays about the historical politics of your country, cutting your teeth on the drama and carnage before going to bed peacefully. After, you are a smuggler who goes to dog fights and snugs away mongrels in your deep, deep jacket pockets. But then, without warning, you are a bear rising blubbered from summertime hibernation to cut your own hair in a disappointed mirror. You are a raccoon at the grocery store whose mask is upside down but still does nothing. You are a joey who is yet too pink to hop out of your protective pouch and into normalcy. And when your eyes open wide again, you are not sure how long it was that you were sleeping. Yeah, thank you very, very much for this opportunity to read. I obviously haven't done it for a while.
That's awesome.
So this was fun. Thank you.
Well, there'll be lots of opportunities. Hopefully the next time we see you will be in person, face to face. I don't know what the city of St. Albert's planning as we emerge back into normal life, but I have a feeling there will be some sort of community celebration. So maybe start preparing something for that day.
Yeah, I also am working on some plans for digital things as well. So
yeah, and we need to see some more of those teen poetry slams happening because at the library.
Yeah, we didn't cancel it. We postponed it. It was going to happen mid-April, but clearly not. But Jeff and Ari, Zach, and I are still planning on having that happen in the fall. So
good. Okay, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Oh, that was good. All right. Now we're getting into the serious business of 7.2, which is Library Board and Arts and Heritage Foundation revised budgets. So I have, Kelly, do you have a presentation?
Just a very brief, I think council has a copy of the report, and both the library and the Arts and Heritage are available to provide an update on their respective budgets. So I think we can just hand that over to them. We've provided a brief summary in the agenda package, which council has available. And so I think it's probably best just to hand it over to both the library and the Arts and Heritage for their respective presentations.
Okay, I see Anne and Peter are both part of the, oh, there they are. There's Peter. Okay, since Peter's video is on, oh, here comes Anne too. Why don't we start with questions for Peter on the library board budget? I'll just look around to see if anyone has any specific questions. Go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. So I think the libraries are in phase 3 of the reopening, right? So I know this was probably done before they announced it, but I think we're being optimistic that June 7th will be when the phase 3 will be coming into play.
Peter, you can Peter, turn on your mic and answer.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. We're in stage 2.
You're in stage 2? Okay,
yeah.
So we're for that. The other thing is, so we've had your budget for staffing is about $2 million a year, isn't it? Or more? 3 million?
It's the bulk of our expenses, yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out, so out of the temporary layoffs, you're saving $67,000 and your total budget is the bulk of the $4 million that we grant you every year? I'm just
So
trying to
the-
figure out how those numbers work.
Most of our reductions to make the about 194,000 are personnel reductions, but layoffs were of course our last resort. So we looked really hard at things we could cut from the personnel budget. The biggest cut is from the summer reading game. So normally we hire 6 students for the summer, and we do get federal funding for a portion of that. But we were going to be spending $87,000 on the summer reading game. And of course, by July, we're still not going to be able to have kids in close proximity in that crowded summer game, amazing summer game that we usually do. So the game is, you could say in a way, is canceled, but we're going to have some sort of staff-led, probably hybrid online, some sort of in-person component. So that was the biggest cut. Another big cut was 29,000 from the not doing merit increases this year. So the city brought this forward, one of the first cuts to the city's budget, and we did that as well, and we're putting that to the end of 2020. And then layoffs, yeah. So layoffs, we're saying a 6-week layoff would save us $67,600.
So I know that you had said that all the library staff were very busy right up to April 27th and beyond. So, because I'm looking at what did the staff do that were in charge of reshelving books, for example, if the library was closed, or in charge of circulation if the library was closed?
Yeah, not all. So we're laying off. We have laid off 60% of our staff. A lot of them are frontline staff. So the dividing line for the layoffs was: are you able to do your job from home, and will you be able to continue doing your job or a redeployed job? Obviously, frontline customer services staff, the people that help you check out books and reshelve books or pages, those are people who have not been able to work. Up till a few weeks ago, there were some, training and development things they could be doing, but especially the frontline staff, the pages, they were not working. Another big component, and a lot of the full-time cuts were to our technical services people. So these are the people that acquire and catalog and process physical materials. So we put a stop to physical items, books and DVDs and that kind of thing. We put a stop to that ordering late March, and deliveries gradually came to a close on those items. Those staff have to be on site to do their jobs, mostly. So that's why they were in the layoffs. We're hoping they would be the first to return. There's going to be a pent-up demand for actual physical materials when people come back to the library, even if we're doing some sort of contactless curbside pickup. People are still going to want bestsellers and the good stuff. So we're hoping those people will be some of the earliest to be recalled to work. But you're right, the frontline people, the customer services people, it may be some time before they're back. We need more of a full opening for those people to come back to work.
What I'm trying to figure out is, until April 27th, they still being paid, and they didn't have a job function to do?
That's right. We felt strongly that everybody plays an important role at the library, even our student pages, and we're behind them, supporting them. And we were working really hard to see how this rolled out. For the longest time, even now, we're trying to become eligible for the federal wage subsidy, the 75% subsidies. There's a great debate in libraries about whether we are eligible for that. I noticed, talking to Anne Ramsden, that Arts and Heritage is eligible for the wage subsidy. There are some libraries that have really working hard on that, had legal opinions on it, and we're keeping in touch with that. So, didn't want to immediately go to a layoff for those people. We felt it was important to support them.
Okay, because this is the disconnect that we have with the city, is that the city really values every one of their employees. They've been a huge contributor to keeping the services where we want them to be. But the city has laid off like 30% of its staff and did not wait 7 weeks to do so. So I understand that you wanted to support the staff, and of course nobody wants to be laid off. But at the same time, you use taxpayer dollars to employ people that you knowingly were not doing anything of their job or not even being repositioned to a different position.
A small portion were at home and sheltering in place. We told them to return home, and for safety reasons. Absolutely.
Yes, and we told our staff to return home as well, but we also had to make the difficult decision of doing layoffs, and it was before April 27th. So I'm just telling you to be mindful, because we are approving budgets, and you are responsible with your board to enacting those budgets, but difficult decisions can be made in difficult times, and you delayed making those decisions until you were actually pressed by the council to come back with a revised budget. So I just want to make sure you're mindful of this going forward, because nobody wants to do layoffs in the city. Nobody wants to do layoffs anywhere. But,
and to give a specific question for Mr. Bailey?
Well, I'm just trying to be cautious about this, Mayor Herron, because this is a very long delay, and he just finished saying he was paying people to not do anything at home.
Okay,
so that needs to be recognized.
Councillor Hughes, it's up to us now to decide what to do.
Yeah, well, it's too late now for that, because the money's already been spent. The other question I had is, do you guys have any plans for how you're going to handle the fact that everything in the library is borrowed? So like we have a situation in the grocery stores where you're like, don't touch produce you won't want to buy. And yet everything here is being borrowed. So regardless if it's being contactless to get to them, the person before that person, you and a million people before it also touched the product. So do you guys have any plans on how you want to handle, or you're planning to handle that situation?
Yeah, this is another great debate in the library world. So the best information library associations have come up with is time is really the only disinfectant available, or the best disinfectant. We haven't closed our book drops, so people have still been able to bring their materials back to the library. There's staff on site. Some of our customer services staff have been regularly on site to clear the book drops. They're quarantined for a week before they're done anything else with. I'm actually at the library now, and the upstairs has all our tables are full of materials that are being timed for a quarantine. So when we come back to service, if we go to a curbside pickup, that will continue. So a book being returned will have to be set aside for a number of days. There's debate on whether a week is necessary. Some libraries have gone with 72 hours. I'm pretty sure we're going to be going with a week before those are touched by patrons.
So the other question is, I know that I have a bunch of books out, and then the due date was extended substantially, reasonably so. So, but the day that you open, is that when everyone's books that have been out right now are going to be due? Or are you planning to stagger it in and say you have an extra 7 days from the time the library opens, or what is the plan there on that?
Yeah, it'll be staged. So there'll be a time period when we may not be open, but we'll say, now's the time to bring your books back. We're ready for them. And then we go to some sort of staged reopening.
Okay, and because I'm wondering, should we maybe be encouraging people to return them now anyway? I'm sure most people, if they've read them, are going to have read them. But that would give you the quarantine time in advance and allow you not to have to process all the books that are outstanding in the same week, for example. Has there been any thought about encouraging people to do that earlier?
Well, we only have minimal staff in customer services now that the layoffs have taken place. So I'd say we need to recall at least some of those people before we can, talk to the community and say, hey, bring your stuff back.
Okay, but there will be, I call it a grace period, I guess, after you open to get the books back, so they don't call it back out on the Tuesday or something?
The last thing we want is, I think there's 27,000 physical materials out right now. We don't want all those coming back in one rush. So that's part of our plan.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
All right, I have Councillor Jolly, then Councillor Watkins.
Thank you. So I guess I wanted to start with the online programming has been great to see. I know that the kids are really appreciating that. So thank you for continuing that as we're all shut down. My question has to do with the June 1 date. Is that the date where you're expecting all staff to be brought back and, a full complement of programming, or are you looking at more of a phased approach, kind of like what the city and AHF is doing?
Yeah, our leadership team's meeting tomorrow to, get a few of these things into place. As I said before, the idea of curbside pickup, 2 mid-sized libraries, Grand Prairie and Medicine Hat, still have the bulk of their staff on site, and they've been doing curbside pickup of holds all through this crisis. They're a bit pariahs in the library world in some ways, but I see that as a key way of returning to service. So whether it's pickup outside the library doors or maybe outside St. Albert Place doors, I've seen libraries doing that. Car drives up and people put on the car's mirror, that kind of thing. Or whether if the St. Albert Place doors are open, we could have a limited entry into the library, a timed entry.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is what kind of additional budget reductions can we expect to see due to kind of ongoing changes to service levels? For example, if we said we're going to do a 7% cut instead of the 4% that's been asked for, is that something like how, considering that these changes are going to go past June 1, or we're expecting them to, is that kind of something that you've considered that to make?
I guess the June 1st is the beginning of the last week of layoffs that we've predicted. So in theory, those end June 7th and are reopening in some manner June 8th. That was our best guess at the time. The province in saying we're in stage 2, so that could be as early as May 28th for some sort of opening. As I said a few minutes ago, we're going to have to stage it somehow in terms of staff being recalled. The technical services staff I mentioned earlier, the people that acquire and process and catalog books. So we're going to have to figure out a way of them working with physical distancing, working safely on site. Those folks are all at the professional building. There is a fair amount of space around each worker. I think we can do it safely. I'm anticipating those would come back first, so possibly before June 8th, June 7th. We'll need some customer services staff to help with reshelving materials. As I said, they've been quarantined here. They're in big piles. We need to look at that. So I guess the 6-week layoff was our best estimate, and it served to contribute to that 4% reduction that we're trying to get to. If we have to continue layoffs longer, then there is a saving. I'd say, I'm looking to 2021, and it's, as council has mentioned, it's going to be a really tough budget year. So anything we save now is going to end up going towards trying to reduce our ask in 2021. I mean, you'll notice that the savings week by week are not substantial, I guess you'd say, in terms of budget savings. It's other things that are saving us the most money. So if council, later came back and said, we need more money, the impact is more severe than we predicted. There are other options the board could look at that we have discussed, like a wage rollback for all staff, things like that.
Thank you. And I guess my last question is, many businesses are reducing their hours of service to kind of help tighten their belts. Is that something that's on the table right now for you?
You mean when we reopen?
Yes. Yeah. Or even staff working right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, most of the remaining staff are salaried staff or full-time staff. So it's difficult to do like an hour reduction. But we've talked more about a wage rollback for all staff instead of like an hour reduction.
But not hours in service, like not like shutting down on Mondays or anything like that.
Oh yeah, in terms of reopening, that's part of the staging as well. I think there's a recognition that we can't be open for all the hours that we were, including the 2 locations. So that's, yeah, absolutely. You'll be looking at something like that.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Watkins.
Okay, my questions were just pre-COVID, what were the total number of part-time staff and full-time staff? And now what are the number of full-time staff and part-time staff?
So we had 72 staff and 43 were laid off.
Okay, and of that, they're all full-time, 73 full-time staff?
No.
What was the breakdown of the 73 staff between full-time and part-time, and then how many are laid off? Full-time, part-time?
I'm sorry, Councillor Walker. I don't have those numbers. I can get them for you.
All right, okay, that's my question, sorry.
All right, I saw Councillor Hansen's hand go up.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Peter, I just want to thank you for ensuring that the programming has been going forward in adult services and children's services. I think that it is not well understood what the library is offering during this most difficult time. And launching these kinds of programs through technology is not easy. So your staff have been incredibly creative. They're reaching people with book clubs, reading programs, seniors clubs, etc. I think that it's quite remarkable. So for your little staff, you're very mighty. I also just want to confirm what I think I'm hearing you say is that if we require you to revise your budget again, you're responsive to that and you'll do what needs to be done if that's necessary. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. I mean, when when Mayor Herron sent the letter, we were already considering, what we should be doing, and the letter absolutely made sense. The city is there for the library in the good times, and in these bad times, we absolutely will be sharing the load. So, yeah.
And would it be fair to say, Peter, that you're following closely what libraries in the region and indeed the province and cities our size are doing in terms of their library staff and their procedures and protocols?
Yeah, as I said, there's a couple libraries who've been doing curbside, and they're sort of on the fringe a little bit. But yeah, my peer library CEOs and I talk weekly. And there's a province-wide meeting on Wednesday, chaired by the Provincial Library Services Branch Director, who's going to discuss the government of Alberta's relaunch strategy and how libraries fit in, what could happen early in the relaunch for libraries and maybe what could not happen.
Okay, and I guess finally, the last question that I would have, and I think you kind of explained this at our last board meeting, but you kind of took us through what it looks like to reopen a library back to full steam. And I think that you said it would take about a week of pretty hard work, getting all your material up and ready to be delivered to patrons again, even if patrons are coming in, at 50% capacity and things like that.
Mhm.
Is that about right for both locations?
Yeah, Councillor Hughes had a good point about materials coming back. We don't want a big rush of materials coming back, but we do need that week to quarantine them to make sure they're safe to go out to patrons again.
Well, I get, but you would need to have more staff than you currently do in that week before an opening. Boots on the ground.
Yeah, I think in particular the folks on the bottom rung are pages who do the hard work of reshelving materials. We're going to need their work, less so the folks who are interacting with patrons face to face at the checkout, that kind of thing.
And in terms of other municipalities who are probably also providing their councils with revised budgets, is there conversation between libraries about how your budgets are getting revised? I mean, is this aligned with what's happening in the province?
Generally, it's similar. Yeah, I mean, other communities seem to be harder hit in terms of revenue reductions. So obviously, their libraries are coming up with a similar reduction to get back to the cities. Yeah, I think Lethbridge, the library, was ahead of the city in terms of layoffs and reduction in revenue and that kind of thing. But yeah, it varies from place to place. Of course, we within the Edmonton area, we keep close tabs on Strathcona County Library and Edmonton Public Library. So we're talking frequently, daily, about, hey, what are you guys doing? That kind of thing.
Good to know. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay, did I see your hand go up too? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Actually, most of my comments or questions have already taken place, but I guess one thing in follow-up in relation to scanning what other potential municipalities are doing. What about the province? Have you heard anything back? I mean, your annual grants, what about 358.7? Is there any? Have that entire grant? Is there any possibility, or have you heard anything about any help from senior levels of government?
Well, as I think Councillor Mackay, the minister really likes libraries, so we've been really lucky. There's been no reduction in the provincial grant to libraries, and that was confirmed last week, I think. So we usually get 100% of our provincial grant in the fall, but this year they're giving us 50% of the grant sometime this month. That provincial grant is great for us, but it's a smaller part of our budget compared to smaller small town and rural libraries. It's a big component of their annual operating. So the province has recognized that and said, we're going to get you some of your funding out right now.
So you haven't heard whether or not that there's any fear that the grant, because the province, of course, is in tough economic times right now themselves, and they may have to pull back on some of their grant funding. So you don't believe that, or you haven't heard anything about the province pulling back some of its funding towards libraries?
No, the provincial library branch director has got word from the minister himself that continues to be a strong advocate for public libraries. So I think if anything's safe in this COVID world, I think that grant is safe, at least for this budget year.
Yeah, and like you said, 2021 is a totally different story.
Exactly.
You're just one other quick one on your revenue reduction. I mean, you've estimated 40,500, and that's basically the only time you only is earned revenue, and that's fines, fees, printing, costing. Is there any other other areas of revenue or any other areas of savings? You did mention that potentially. I'm getting feedback, Madam Mayor. It's discerning that I not only can see myself, but I can actually hear myself. I'm not sure if men can help me on that, or
Maybe everybody just needs to be muted.
yeah, I don't. Anne, are you muted? Perfect. That's better. Thanks. Sorry, it was just a little disconcerting. But the question again, Peter, is around the 40,500 that you had estimated for revenue reduction. Is it any? How are you looking at, further? I guess if this thing does move further, as in previous questions, any modifications to that 40,500, or is there any other savings that you can make for the fact that potentially like deferring out some of your IT costs, things like that?
One of the components of our revenue is, fundraising. But we've talked about fundraising in terms of our fall literary festival, Starfest. We always get good grants for that, provincial and federal grants. I think those are in jeopardy. Our Friends of the Library contributes to a lot of things, including the Starfest. They had their casino canceled for July, or postponed. So there's a chunk of funds that's not available. I haven't included that in terms of revenue reduction, but it's always difficult to come up with other sources of funding, and I think it's going to be more difficult. There's other groups who have less funding available than we do, and they're going to be really searching for those corporate dollars or foundation dollars. So we're a bit leery about extending our reach into that area. Yeah.
No, and I'm sure. I mean, Starfest was my next question, because I think that's going to be something that is just really a great unknown right now. But I guess maybe possibly you can postpone it. I don't know where you are on that, but that's not a real budget question. So I'm finished, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, I think I have one more from Councillor Jolly.
Thank you. Just one last one. So Peter, you spoke about how we're kind of trying to stay in line with kind of other municipal libraries, and we're not one of the outliers. Can you speak to kind of why the decision was made to kind of be an outlier in terms of layoffs? I know for the Edmonton libraries, they issued notices, I think March 30th, effective April 14th. So kind of a full 2 weeks, I think, before St. Albert. And the Edmonton Library was kind of in line with St. Albert's Recreation as well. So that was just kind of crossing our fingers. Or I guess, why was the decision made to be the outlier for that decision?
So, Canadians always look at, hey, what's America doing? St. Albert, we always look at Edmonton, right? Lots of other libraries who have not done any layoffs. Strathcona County, Sherwood Park, for example, is they may have laid off their pages by now, but that's it. Red Deer's first layoffs to some of their casual part-time staff start May 3rd. So in terms of our peer libraries, mid-sized libraries, I think we're towards the active ones in terms of layoffs rather than the inactive ones. But you're right. Edmonton did go when their city went.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Okay, so, I mean, we can come back. Is there any more questions that are library related that you can think of right now? Seeing some shaking heads. Okay, we're gonna move on to put Anne in the hot seat. So any questions related to the Arts and Heritage Foundation? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Hi, Anne, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. So first of all, thank you for the level of cuts you did were substantial comparatively speaking to the library on a percentage basis. So what I'm wondering is that when you put this forward, it was before the province came back with their relaunch strategy.
Okay.
And I believe that the relaunch strategy has the museums opening in phase 2, if I'm wrong. Am I wrong?
I think phase 1.
Phase 1.
So it could be as early as May the 14th.
Right. So what I'm wondering is, because when you did this, it was before Thursday. I'm confident because we had it sent to us on Thursday, right? So do you think that you still need the same level of cuts because you could be opening as early as 9 days from now? And so with regards to the staffing, are you still comfortable with having this level, or do you think that you actually will require additional staffing than what you've suggested at this point?
We've started to work on a relaunch strategy before we knew that it was potentially the May the 14th. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a strategy where we modify our opening hours and open up gradually. One of the things that concerns us is keeping our staff and the public safe. And as you know, our staff work in very tight, cramped conditions. So what we were trying to do to keep the 2-meter distancing was actually have fewer staff working and reduce the opening hours as a result.
Okay. So you're still believing that the budget you're providing to us today would still be accurate going forward, even in light of what the new information on Thursday, is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm not sure if this goes to forgive me, Anne, I forgot your last name. I'm just going to go to Anne now. Or Mr. Scoble. So Ramzan, thank you. Gosh, my brain. Anyway, I think this might be to Mr. Scoble. So St. Albert Place right now is basically in lockdown. Like you have to have special permission and know many magical codes and leprechauns to get in. So if the museum is supposed to open as early as the 14th, do we have plans for how this will actually be accessible to the public?
Well, we're currently developing those, yes. So, I mean, it might be limited access to the set of doors nearest to the museum, but we're working on those plans right now.
Okay.
And if I can just add, our professional association, the Alberta Museums Association, is currently working with the government of Alberta to actually give us more details as to how to operate museums with this, with all the new protocols in place.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody's trying to figure out how to handle this. But it's just that because you're in a building inside a building, and that building's being shut down, there was other complications to be able to have the public access that. So, okay, I think that's all the questions I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I saw Councillor Hanson's hand up, so she's next, and then I see Councillor Mackay. Is there anyone else wanting to get in the queue? Not right away. Okay, go ahead, Jackie, and then we'll go to Ken.
Thanks. Thank you, Anne, for the report. So much like businesses that are in stage 1 of a relaunch, do museums actually have a choice of whether they're going to open that day or remain closed until they feel they've got a good handle on safety?
I don't think, because we don't get any funding from any stable funding from the province, I'm not really sure that. I mean, if we choose to relaunch when we believe it's safe for the staff and visitors, I think that's up to us. What I'm looking at with the 14th is that's potentially the first date that we could open, and that's why we're looking at a plan that would include modified hours. We want to make sure that things are really safe before we throw the doors open, you know, to the extent they were before.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mackay.
A quick one, but maybe I'm not sure even if it's an easy one. So events that you depend upon to generate revenue, so like activities in the grain elevator park, like the food trucks and all that, those are still going to be mandated by the social distancing and the numbers of people who can attend. Is that correct? So they will be out? You won't be able to do it?
We've taken those out of our budget for revenue.
Yeah, so you basically won't, even though potentially you can physically open, you will still be under the Chief Medical Officer of Health's kind of general guidelines. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest concern for us is what happens to the schools. We're certainly hoping that the schools come back in September and that we can still do field trips. And we're currently developing online and virtual programming for schools.
But basically, even, I mean, you will, in addition to your having staff concerns, I mean, you've got patrons concerns coming in to the Grain Elevator Park or into Heritage Park or into the actual the facilities of the museum. So, that answered my question, Madam Mayor. I was just thinking that, yeah, they're open May 14th, but really their ability to generate revenue is not there.
Oh, it's definitely down. The research coming out of the States is that exhibition-based and open-air culture facilities will be the ones that people come back to first. People are going to be avoiding going to theatres, symphonies, science centres, that sort of stuff. So we believe that people will start coming back to us sooner than other cultural facilities.
But you will be mandated.
Oh, yes.
I would imagine they'll modify the actual numbers as part of their relaunch strategy, but still it's pretty difficult to have outdoor festivals that generate revenue if you're limited to the size or number.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
All right, any more questions for Anne? Oh, Councillor Hughes has another one, go ahead.
Thank you. So are we planning to open like the little schoolhouse, the Grain Elevator, and the art gallery as well in some kind of staggered opening as the 14th, or is it just the museum that's being considered eligible?
The museum, the art gallery, we can certainly do the Little White School and the River Lot 24. We actually weren't expecting to be in phase 1, and we've actually got some major maintenance planned for the grain elevators. We would keep the grain elevator site closed until we have finished the maintenance on the grain elevators and all the equipment is off site. Typically May and June would have been very busy with schools. Because the schools aren't in, we will keep that site closed until we have the equipment off site.
The little schoolhouse really is only open when there are organized tours, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't staff that all the time. That's an activity that we may not open because there's a lot of sharing of activities and craft supplies and things. So any areas where we do a lot of sort of hands-on, we will keep those closed in the short term.
Are you guys, you're not responsible as well for the Father LaCombe Chapel, right? That's the province.
Well, we have a service agreement with them. We have an unsigned service agreement currently with the province, as do most people. So we really don't know what's happening with that either.
Okay. So right now, really, it's going to be just the art gallery and the museum that we'd be looking to have open in a,
yes,
hopefully.
And hopefully River Lot 24.
River Lot 24. That's the walking trail, right? Or am I missing something? Is the River Lot 24 next to the grain elevator?
It's just south of it.
Okay. Okay. So that's not open right now, you're saying? Okay.
That's not open either.
And do you guys have a plan to advertise any of this that you are open? Or because what I'm thinking of is the parents are getting bored out of their tree with their children right now. Bike sales, apparently you can't find a bike for love or money right now. Like Canadian Tire has no bikes in the entire store, I saw yesterday. So I'm thinking that you may actually have more demand than you think, just because people are struggling to find things to do with their children after being locked in their home with them for 2 months. So do you have anything do you have a plan right now about how you plan to let people know that this is an option for families?
Absolutely. We've done one of the opportunities, or one of the good things that's happened, is that we've actually increased our online presence. So we have a really great base of people who actually tune into our social media, our blogs, our website. So we have a great platform to actually do a lot of advertising.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Speaking of that, and I do owe Shauna Randolph a
You
video.
do?
I do. She's been bugging me. So when you see her, tell her I'll get her my video right away. And
I will tell her that.
I am going to miss the Father's Day food trucks. I'm sure you'll miss the revenue from that, but that's always
but there's always next year.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Any more questions? library questions that might have popped in your head? Seeing none. All right. Can I see a member of council put up their hand? Thank you, Councillor Broadhead, to make the motions. Go ahead when you're ready.
That the revised budget of the update from the Arts and Heritage Foundation dated April 20th, 2020 be received as information. And secondly, that the revised budget and update from the St. Albert Public Library dated May the 4th, 2020 and received on April 29th, 2020 be received as information.
Thank you. Any comments on that, Wes?
Just a couple. I think the commentary and the questions by council was great. As I reviewed the responses, I think council probably could have learned a little bit in terms of the request that we actually gave to the two organizations here. They gave us their response, and that's what we asked for. And so we'll receive it as information and go forward. In the future, I suspect that we probably should have given them a target and then requested a response to that target if we weren't, because I sensed that there was some difference of opinion on how the two organizations responded to our request. But in reality, we gave them that latitude, and so here we are. So the recommendation is to receive it as information, and then we'll go forward later on in the day.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll just close off with, yeah, we gave them latitude, but I believe that is because we do value the open and honest working relationship that we have with these two agencies. And so I appreciate you guys. You got a letter from me, what, 2-3 weeks ago? I can't even remember. And you pulled these new numbers together very quickly with the lens that we're all in this together to try to figure out where we can save the city some money and support our staff at the same time. So appreciate you guys doing this on such quick turnaround. Councillor Broadhead to close.
Fair enough, Madam Mayor. Good comment, and nothing further.
All right, call for the vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, that's unanimous. All right, thank you guys. We're gonna move on now to budget adjustments, and I have probably Diane. Yes, Diane McCordy down to do a bit of a presentation. Go ahead, Diane.
Thank you. I just sort of have a quick introduction to the item. So good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. Prior to the setting of the tax rate bylaw currently scheduled to come before council on May 19th, 2020, administration provides council with recommended amendments to the budget that was originally approved by council in December of 2019. Given the currently unknown impact of COVID-19, administration is not making a recommendation to amend the budget related to these impacts at this time, and is working to implement strategies to minimize the financial impact on taxpayers in 2020 and beyond. The budget amendments presented in this report result in no change to the approved 2020 tax increase of 2.5%. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, I'm sure there's going to be quite a few questions. Diane, did you get a heads up on Councillor Hughes's proposed amendment?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good to know. And I had asked Kevin if that came forward. Does Stephen have some modeling on the RMR and how it would affect our reserves?
Yeah, no, we didn't have a chance, unfortunately, because he's in the EOC. Realistically, the RMR plan was for a very long period of time. What we were requiring to hopefully get to the point where we were fully self-funded for our RMR requirements. So, yeah, it wouldn't have a gigantic impact. We will get him to do that modeling so that we understand what any delays or reductions in any of those approvals will ultimately have, how much longer it would take for us to achieve, being fully funded and what the risks are.
So saying that, and I know there's gonna be lots of questions other than the 1.5%, and I'll open that up in a sec, but Kevin and I had a quick conversation before this started. He thinks that Diane and her team can probably respond to Councillor Hughes's motion today, and we can pass motions that would be slightly amended to what's in front of us. But any other significant changes, they can still handle, but we would need to either call a special council meeting before May 19th to kind of redo this agenda item, the adjustments, or I don't know, Kevin, can we, or Diane, can we add, the same conversation, 2020 budget adjustments to the 19th agenda right before the tax rate, or would you prefer a special council meeting?
I would prefer a special council meeting. The challenge of trying to bring it the same day is that if the motions were sort of passed as they were recommended on the 19th, we wouldn't be able to pass the tax rate bylaw that day, which would be required in order for us to get our tax notices out.
Right, and I think that's key, that we really want to get this done by the 19th, because those that are going to continue to pay their taxes, property taxes, they need to get their notice of assessment and their bill out ASAP, right? So that's kind of key. So just so you know, council, and we're open to any changes you have in budgets, but we might need to call a special council meeting. And because committees got canceled on Monday, we could do it then. It depends on Diane and her team and how much they have to do. So I'm seeing Councillor Mackay's hand up first, and then I'll just go around taking questions. So go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, thanks. A couple of quick questions, I hope. In some of the backgrounders, I think the one we got 2 weeks ago, the 2.5 property tax increase on the average residential property at what, $450,000 represents $7.50 a month. Do we have a breakdown of what that is on business tax?
Well, I think so. Right now, we're always presenting the tax increase to sort of a blended amount between residential and non-residential. So from a blended perspective, it's yeah, I'd have to figure out, we'd have to select a a value of a property to be able to calculate that.
So we don't have, it wouldn't be easy well, it would be probably need the special council meeting if we wanted to pull out a ratio similar to what Edmonton did, where we identified potentially a different rate between business and municipal. Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
Well, so typically when we bring the tax rate bylaw, and I'll ask Mr. Dolan to jump in if he has anything to add. So typically when we bring the tax rate bylaw is when we start, providing a recommended, split between the tax rates, because they're typically not even, but we have some thoughts as to what we would be proposing this year.
So you kind of, Greg, or I guess that kind of lost me. So do we know, so if we say that it's if the consolidated operating budget is 2.5% this year, can we break that down into a business and a municipal?
Hi, Greg here. Yeah, we can. In most years, what we do is we manipulate the tax split to our advantage, and we attempt to keep parity in the municipal tax increase between the two classes. But this would be a year where we might be suggestive as administration to council that we're looking to, say, freeze the tax split so that we can provide some COVID-19 related tax relief. So, yeah, so to answer your question succinctly, yes, we can manipulate the tax split so that it is not in parity.
Okay, so but in order to potentially achieve the recommendation of 2.5, just to deal with the inflationary impacts and the impact of the RMR, would that put a bigger burden on our, let's say if we recognize the dangers that businesses are in currently in relation to the unique challenges, our residents, or many of them are in the same challenges. So would recognizing everything that I've just said, would we have to raise the rate higher for a resident?
Yeah, what we're finding, each year is unique, dependent on what's happening with the different components of tax, namely municipal and education. And really the numbers to date from what we have is showing that if we were to manipulate tax split and to freeze it this year, that would provide a benefit for the non-residential class, which seems to align with some of the messaging that we're seeing provincially and within other municipalities of trying to identify ways to help that component. And then what happens is when we add in the effects of the education tax this year, what you'll see is that the education tax effects for residential specifically are quite preferential, meaning that they're dropping the overall weighting. So that helps us. So if we decide that we want to freeze the tax split on the municipal side, which will end up helping non-residential, you'll see that once we then start talking weighted tax increases, that it's the residential side overall that will benefit from that. So me talking like this is maybe still a bit confusing, but certainly there are options at our disposal that we would want to articulate to you so that we're getting the result that we're looking for.
So, but and sorry if I'm parroting this back to you, Greg, it's just so we could freeze our business taxes. And because of the situation we're in with, and do we know what the education tax levy is on us this year, as well as Homeland? Is that zero? Is zero?
Yeah.
I just thought maybe you were saying okay. So it's zero. So I guess, and you have no idea right now, and that's why we would need to come back maybe Monday with that scenario if we were to move forward with that.
We do. Conversely, we do have all the requisition components available to us now. So we do know what the province is wanting from education tax. We have heard from Homeland Housing. And we do actually have the tax rates from Sturgeon County that we incorporate into our tax rate bylaw. So all the pieces are known. But really the inputs that we need to know to be able to give you full information would be decisions on tax split and the finalization of the actual municipal budget amount.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's still, we could have that in debate or whatever. These are just the questions that I'm exploring right now based on the fact that we're in unprecedented times and the impacts that we are also realizing that the RMR is a significant risk at this potential time. So anyways, that answers my two questions, and it might lead to something further, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Who's next? Let's see, anyone with any questions? Oh, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. So, Diane, I just wanted to be clear. So the motion I had to reduce the amount going into the capital by 1%, that would affect next year's spending, right? Or would it be this year's spending?
Well, what all it's impacting is the actual contribution to the reserve this year. So basically the money that we would be actually spending on RMR projects this year is from money that's already sitting in reserves that we have saved in prior years. So this just would reduce the contribution to the reserve that we had planned for.
So it wouldn't stop any projects from, it wouldn't stop any projects from going forward that have been approved by council in the previous budget then, right?
No.
Okay. Perfect. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so I sent in a question Friday, Saturday, I can't remember, on the weekend maybe, as a result of the minister's letter on MSI. I don't know if Diane, if you've had a chance. How much do we get for the MSI operating grant?
I don't have the number exactly. I believe it's just over 400,000. I think my team hasn't had a chance to confirm that yet.
Okay, do you know where we direct that money?
I think we do typically direct it towards library. But it's sort of a wash, right? So if we took that money away from the funding of the library, then we would have to backfill that funding with other operating dollars. So
no, if it was to some operations that was municipal that I thought we could delay for the year, then I would make that motion. But if it's library, you're right, we would just have to. Okay, so don't worry about that one. And what about the capital? Did we? You read the letter, and I just don't want to lose. So I guess I can't remember my questions. What do we have from previous years in MSI capital?
Yeah, so again, so I haven't had the chance to put together the full sort of response to your question, and we'll continue to work on that. But in essence, the letter it's really just a cash flow issue. So they're not saying in any way that we're not going to be entitled to all of the MSI that we've been allocated. They're just basically said, if you don't actually need the cash now because you're not doing the project this year, we're going to wait to give you the cash, because sometimes they give us the cash ahead of time, even before we've completed the project. So it's really more of a cash flow piece. We're not from that letter at risk of losing any MSI dollars.
So I felt that if we weren't going to spend our allocation this year, we would lose it. And that's the way I read the letter. I'll have to go look at it again.
Yeah, that's not the way I read it. I'll look at it again, and we'll put together our history of the MSI. But
you read the piece. I don't know who would get the email, but they said that we're going to get an email and you have to respond right away. And if not, you lose the money. Like you saw that piece of it, right?
Yeah.
So if I get it, I will forward it to you right away. So these two motions, well, you've got some money going into the growth stabilization reserve. I was just wondering where that reserve is sitting.
oh goodness, I'd have to go back and look. So part of what we also use that growth stabilization reserve, if we're not applying it against the tax basis, we put it towards usually our current year growth pieces. But we would, in this case, we would tag this 387,000 to be held for the potentially to offset any current year deficit that we're not able to deal with through other strategies, and then it could potentially be available by policy, by council motion to help us offset any increases on the 2021 budget. But sorry, I didn't have the.
Okay, and can I get that later from you, like at some point? Yeah, and then my next question is the transfer to the stabilization reserve. So we've been moving money in and out of that one for like quite frequently recently with some of the COVID related stuff. So what, after this motion, if it passes, what would the stabilization reserve be at?
So right now the stabilization reserve was just right around $4 million. Council has sort of pre-approved $2 million of that use towards response to COVID, and so then this would add another 400 to that reserve that council could choose what to do with it if it was to further support any remaining deficit.
Okay, so 2.4 million. All right. And then, yeah, I think you sort of answered my question. So if we're faced with a 4.6 or even higher deficit come December 31st of 2020, the growth stabilization reserve would be an appropriate reserve to help cover off that deficit?
Yeah, it would for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I would feel that would totally fall in the parameters of the point of us saving that money up, kind of. All right, any more questions? Okay, I'm looking at you, Councillor Mackay, because it sounds like you want to do something. So
yeah, I do, but it's too early.
Hold on, Ken, one sec. Before I go back to Kevin, if we're going to make any motions beyond Councillor Hughes's today, would you prefer us not even make any of these motions and delay it to the 11th?
I actually think the motion should be made so we know what we have to go away and work on, right? So
sorry, yeah, well, honestly, if we can get some of the modeling from Stephen by Monday, I would prefer to wait before I vote on Councillor Hughes's motion. But I'm talking about the other ones, Kevin, like, well, I guess we could split them and we just wouldn't do the fourth one, right?
Yeah, that was what I was going to suggest in relation to that, Madam Mayor. You could, the only question I have is process around that. So, I mean, do we have to set, let's say the 2 point, let's just say it's at 2.5. If we set it at 2.5 and then ask administration to come back with the different ratios that identify the business would be 0 and the residentials would be whatever it was, would that be that's a separate motion? And would it then come back on Monday?
I don't think you would want to do number 4 until we had everything in, which is the final tax requirement.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm wondering on that one, because the timing, because I mean, let's just say if Councillor Hughes's motion passes, we come in 1% lower, 1.5, and so now they're setting. So Greg and Diane are coming back with a totally different base rate to use their projections off of. Or that might be the wrong term, but you know what I mean? I'm just asking for process.
So are you, do you, look me in the eye.
Well, I would like to look at the ratio, but I mean, at the same time, again, it's a two-edged sword. I mean, obviously, as Mr. Dolan has said, that potentially there is some there are some benefits this year that wouldn't be available in other years. But without knowing what that impact is, I mean, I guess I need to know that information.
Greg, can you come back? Where do you go? There he is. Thanks. If Councillor Mackay wants to, and when you say freeze, we're not talking about freezing the non-res tax rate. We're talking about freezing the migration. That's
Correct,
what
yeah.
So, Councillor Mackay, you need to be specific on what you want. Do you want to freeze the tax rate from 2019 to have it the exact same for businesses, or you just want to freeze the migration and do what?
I mean, that's the information that I'm not 100% sure on. Like, I mean, is that by freeze, do you mean zero? So there'd be a 0% tax increase for the non-residential, but then, and if that's what that means, I'm fine with that. But then what's the resulting impact to the residential tax base?
Right, yeah, okay, so
maybe
clear, you don't want to freeze the migration, you just want to freeze the tax rate for non.
Correct. So what does that mean, Mr. Dolan?
Yeah, and so I think the best way for me to answer that at this time, it's relatively simple, like I say, to freeze the migration or the current tax split. And when I talk about freezing, really, I'm talking about that component. If the desire of council was to achieve, say, a 0% municipal tax increase to non-residential at the expense of the residential class, that actually is quite difficult to do. And if I was say screen sharing right now and putting numbers up for you to look at, you would see that the calibration of doing that type of thing would leave the residential class having to pick up quite a bit of a tax increase to achieve that zero. So really the realities of this is that freezing the actual tax split as it is now is probably going to, you'll see, be the option that's the most feasible, if that makes sense.
Not, unfortunately, no. I missed the connection on the last bit there. So what can you explain it in Police 101 language?
Sure. I think the best way to give a simplified explanation of it is, let's say that right now we do nothing to the budget and we finalize up at 2.5%. If it was a normal year, we would probably come forward and say, we want to give a 2.5% parity increase to res and non-res. And to do that, we're going to move the tax split by 20 basis points. And that's kind of what you've seen happen in most normal good years. So I think we all understand that part. If though we said, what we want to do is help out the non-res base as much as we can, and we're still looking at 2.5% municipal tax increase, what we'll do is we'll freeze the tax split at 2019 levels, because that's what policy allows us to do right now, is just simply to freeze but not to move it backwards. You'd be looking at about non-res being down at about 1.7 and res being at about 2.7. So that's what the effect of the freezing is. So instead of both getting 2.5 and 2.5, you've now tilted it the best you can for the COVID situation to be about 1.7 versus 2.7.
Perfect. Thank you. That made it through this thick skull. But I mean, and so we wouldn't be able to approve number 4, Madam Mayor, because I mean, potentially Councillor Hughes' motion might still result in a reduction if it was approved. And then maybe we wouldn't need to have that whole discussion around the mitigation. So.
Okay. So are we?
So I mean, I guess I don't know whether or not you're going to, if Councillor Hughes is going to make the motion, which is going to impact what I do.
Well, I think Councillor Hughes is making the motion, and according to my conversation with Kevin, and I think he probably talked to Diane and Greg ahead of time, that we can do that motion today. It's a fairly simple one. Yours is a little bit more complicated. That's why we're thinking of holding a special meeting, which then we could deal with Councillor Hughes's at the same time, etc. But now I'm seeing Councillor Hansen's hand up. So do you mind if I go over to her and then we can come back?
No problem at all. Thanks.
Go ahead, Councillor Hansen.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And I guess this question then is for Mr. Dolan. Thanks for your layman's explanation. If we were to pass a motion to decrease our 2.5% budget today by whatever, 0.5 or a percentage, can we still do a freezing of a tax split so that there is benefit to the non-res and not such an increase to the res? I know it's a minor increase to the res, even if we stay at the 2.5, but as you say, it tilts it differently. So what do those kinds of numbers look like? Or is it significant?
So we kind of had forewarning that there would be questions of this type. So that gave me enough time this afternoon just to do some back of the napkin stuff for you. So let's assume that council passed the motion to take the capital RMR down by 1%. And that would effectively take the total municipal tax increase from 2.5 down to 1.5. I'll give you two scenarios. One is if we froze the tax split, and one is if we moved it in a non-COVID year. And the numbers that I'm going to give you though is apologize if you're looking for municipal only, but this is the weighted, and the weighted includes the education piece of the pie. So if we froze the tax split, we would be looking at a weighted overall residential tax increase of about 0.75%, and non-res would be at 3.0% overall weighted. Sorry, that's letting the tax split move or migrate. If we froze the tax split and we also reduced down by this 1% as per the motion, and we froze the tax split to try to provide more relief to non-res, the overall weighted tax increases would be about 0.9% for res, so just under 1% total increase, and for non-res it would be about 2.4%. And the reason that you're seeing those differences between the two classes is that although our conversation typically is mostly about the municipal tax impacts, there are differing education tax impacts this year that are affecting these overall weightings.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Watkins, go ahead.
Okay, just so to recap, you said if you take it down a point, non-res goes to 3 and res goes to 0.75 if we allowed it to fluctuate, and if we froze it, it's non-res 2.4 and res 0.9.
Those are the approximate numbers, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just had clarification. Okay, thank you.
Greg, do you have the weighted numbers if we keep the capital levy at 1.5%? Because honestly, I think Edmonton is getting a bunch of kudos for reducing their tax rate, but their reductions was a weighted number. And when you just gave those numbers, they're not that bad. A 0.7 or 0.9 for res is not horrible because it's weighted, and the province has reduced they have taken away all increases. So do you have the weighted numbers without Councillor Hughes's motion?
I do, yeah. So if we did, I call this the status quo scenario. So with the current budget amount as per the AR that you've seen today from Diane, with a budget of 110.26 million coming from tax levy. So the weighting with a frozen tax split would be res would be at a 1.6% tax increase, and non-res would be at a 3.2% tax increase.
Okay. Now that's if we kept, that's like what about keep locking was that locking the ratio?
That's locking, yeah.
Okay, what about if we went in a non-COVID year?
I think those numbers were, don't have those in front of me, but I'm just guessing that was more like 1.7 and 3.5.
Yeah. Those are good numbers to have, actually. And we'd asked quite a while ago what a 0% tax increase would look like, and you said it would save, I can't remember what you said, $90 a year on the average household or something, or $750 a month. So to take the capital levy from 1.5 to 0.5, that would be saving residents, what, $2 a month? Something like that?
Yeah,
Well,
something like that.
math. Something like that?
About a third, yeah.
Okay, yeah. That just helps me in my decision making because honestly, I'm gonna have a hard time voting on Councillor Hughes's motion without that modeling. So if we can get it before Monday for a special council meeting, that would really help me because that is going to jeopardize our future tax increases. So we want to see that, but we're going to let the conversation keep flowing because I don't know where we're going yet. Councillor Jolly had just suggested that we do the motion on growth assessment to go to stabilization, that the library and AHF motions to go into the stabilization reserve could happen today, and then we move the rest of this conversation to a special council meeting on Monday to talk about Councillor Hughes's motion so we can have more background on that, and it might allow Councillor Mackay to digest what he's heard today. So is it
Just saying it would allow me to get the proper wording
yeah
as well.
Oh, I think we just do the first three motions and we'll delay that fourth one until a special council meeting.
So the only challenge we'll have with that if we don't do Councillor Hughes's motion today is that depending on how the discussion goes on Monday, if something more complicated comes out of that discussion in terms of council direction, we may not be in a position to, on the fly that day, come up with the final tax requirement and budget to be able to pass if it's anything more complicated than the motion that's sort of sitting on the floor right now.
I get that, and I think we won't allow that, Diane, but you did tell me, or I was told that if Councillor Hughes, we could do Councillor Hughes's motion today, like that's an easy, yeah. So what, we could wait till Monday and that would still be an easy motion.
It would, I just thought if something else came out and another motion came forward or it got more complicated, then we might be delayed again.
Okay, well, we can just say, send in your notices of motions by the end of today and that's it. No, none will be accepted beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kind of have that. I'm seeing nods around the room. Council, is everyone available Monday, May 11th for a special council meeting?
What time? In the morning? Probably, is the morning fine, Diane?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm supposed to film a video, but I can ask Rayanne to reschedule that to the afternoon. That's fine.
Well, I'm just thinking the morning just gives more time and whatever.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just a video. I can reschedule. And Councillor Hughes, are you okay waiting till Monday to your motion? Okay. All right.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, what time Monday morning?
Does it matter?
Well, I've got
Okay,
let me over by noon, I guess, because I got an
yeah,
executive meeting at noon for national.
Okay, no, let's try to do it like right at 9 a.m. and then we.
That would be good.
Madam
Did you
Mayor,
see-
did you want to do a motion to set the special council meeting?
Yeah, we should do that today too. Thanks for reminding me. Okay.
Thanks.
So, anyone else have any proposed changes to the first three motions that are in front of us? Councillor Jolly?
For number 2, I'm going to move to change the number to $312,753, which is the equivalent of 7% up from 4%.
Did you say 300?
312,000, I think, yeah. If I got my math wrong, please correct me.
So the library has presented us with a revised budget of savings of 4%. And I think you're getting the 7% from that's what the city is targeting. Is that right, Councillor Jelly?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do these one at a time. The first one I think we can do easy. So I'm looking for a councillor to do, go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Okay, I'm going for a win here. That $387,000 of the additional growth assessment revenue be transferred to the growth stabilization reserve.
Anything to add to that?
Nope. We're good.
Anyone else? Okay, call for the vote. That is unanimous. Okay.
Woohoo!
You got the win. Growth stabilization reserve just grew. That's good. All right. I'll get someone else. Well, actually, Councillor Jolly, you can make the motion with your new number in it if you want. Just do it that way. Or do you want somebody else to make it and then we debate on the amendment?
No, I could do that.
Okay.
So that
Jolly makes a motion at the 7% number, whatever it was. We'll get the math checked. If it fails, then somebody can make the previous motion of 194. All right. Go ahead, Councillor Jolly.
So that $312,753 of the budget previously allocated to the St. Albert Public Library be redirected to the stabilization fund for the 2020 year to support any deficit that may or may not occur as a result of COVID-19.
All right. Diane, before I accept that motion, did you check her math?
No, I didn't.
I was going off the numbers that I'd written down in my book. So thank you for checking.
Actually, the only thing that I would ask if it's possible is if we could round it to the nearest $100.
That's totally friendly. So that would be 313.
Okay. Now I'll accept it. Go into your debate.
So I think Councillor Broadhead, you were right in that we did not direct HF or the library to hit a certain target. So this is that target. We're asking everybody in the city to tighten their belts and to really look hard for savings in operation. I think it's our responsibility to ask the same of our partner organizations. This isn't to say that the library isn't a vital service in St. Albert. I love the library. I think they're doing a great job. The way that they've transitioned to online has helped families like mine stay busy kind of during this time and keep kids engaged and as social as they can be. But the reality is that the library's been closed since mid-March. We're crossing our fingers for a June opening, but we don't know. And we're going to see reduced services for a long time. I think that Ms. Ramsden kind of outlined how this is going to be affecting museums and art galleries in terms of making sure that staff are safe, making sure that patrons are safe, and the library is going to be affected as well. And they're not going to be opening full throttle right away. So this is that target that can be us directing them to hit, just like we're asking kind of everyone else in the city to really pull together and tighten their belts.
Councillor Jolly, did you do the math for the HF as well?
They were already at 12%, so
okay.
no.
Good to know. All right, is there any other comments on this? I'm seeing Councillor Hughes's hand up, and then Councillor Watkins, and then Councillor Broadhead.
I'll do it later.
You go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Okay, right now I think I'm going to be supporting this motion, Councillor Jolly. When I look at the percentage reduction, Arts and Heritage took it quite seriously to make the reductions, and the library reduced theirs by not even half the amount in proportion to what Arts and Heritage did. And I also think that there's some more room in the budget for recognizing the fact that we are in very tight budget times right now. And this is difficult decisions have to be made by all. And I think that we need to recognize that the library has to reduce their budget. 7% is a minimal really on the whole scheme of things of how much money is being put in versus the amount of services. So at this point, unless somebody talks to me otherwise, I'm going to be supporting this motion. That's it.
All right, I think I had Councillor Watkins next. You're still muted, Ray.
I just had a question. Sorry, how did you come up with the number again? 7%? Like, where do we pick that number from? Why wasn't it 12%? Why wasn't it 6%?
Oh, 7%. Sorry, I'm speaking out of turn, Councillor Jolly, but 7% is what Kevin's asking our own staff to find. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so you just want to pair it to the staff. Okay, that's all. All right.
Sorry about that. Okay, Councillor Broadhead, and then Councillor Hanson, and then Councillor Mackay.
Well, thank you, Councillor Jolly, for bringing this forward. I think it's a reasonable motion to present here, and it's also a challenge to our partners, as already been said, that they need to come to the table. I appreciate the effort that they made, but the reality of it is we have new information now that will, you know, sort of inform what's going forward. They won't be able to open June 6th, as I understand. And quite honestly, we need to set the target for what the entire city needs to make an effort to achieve. And we need to set that out there before them and give them an opportunity to meet it. So you certainly have my support on this one.
All right, I think I got Councillor Hanson next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just think it's a little bit unfair that we didn't actually lay this out when we asked them to revise their budget. And I think we heard today from Mr. Bailey that they would be responsive to further cuts. So I'm not really prepared to put a 7% on it today because at the end of the day, it could even be more. They may not be able to do that because they are scheduled to open in stage 2. Stage 2 may come before we actually realize, might not be as long as a wait as we think. So it's not that I don't expect the library to be responsive and make revised cuts as necessary. I don't want to put that number on them today and surprise them with that. I think they need a little bit of time. So I won't be supporting this motion.
Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, I think Councillor Hanson spoke quite well of where my feelings are on this one. It's a matter of fairness, and it goes back to Councillor Broadhead's comments in the previous discussion around maybe we could learn something from future situations. But again, we're in an unprecedented time where we've had to go looking for our outside agencies to come back with us with reduced budgets. So I think that you heard in Mr. Bailey's presentation that there could be further reductions, and they were willing to look at it, as Councillor Hanson looked at, but there's also potentially further revenue impacts, and it's would be unfair just to arbitrary, and I realize 7% represents something that we're looking at, but I mean, if that would have been provided to them at the beginning of this exercise, then I would have supported this without a problem. But I don't think it's fair right now at this particular stage just to drop this on them right now. So I won't be supporting this.
All right. I think I'm going to support your motion, Councillor Jolly. I feel like it's our job to gather what information we can from our partners and stuff, but in the end, the public dollar does sit with us. And you know, watching some of the conversations that's going on in one of our neighbor municipalities about the duty of council is to put forward motions to make a difference, and this is going to make a difference in how we deal with the deficit. So I feel like you've done your job as a councillor by doing the math and trying to align it with something concrete, which is our own expectations, Mr. Scoble's expectations of his staff to come up with 7%. So I think it's probably fair. I agree with what Councillor Hanson and Councillor Mackay said about the expectations that we put out to both agencies, but at the same time, these are pretty unique circumstances, so I will be supporting it. Councillor Jolly to close. Oh, Councillor Watkins, did you not get into debate? So go ahead, unmute.
I thought we were in questions. I asked her a question.
Yeah, we were already in debate. So, but you can go ahead. That's fine.
Okay, I'm kind of torn on this one. I just want to hear what Councillor Jolly has to say to close, because I do agree with Councillor Mackay and Councillor Hanson that you know, we knew the 7%. We should have told them about it before when we told them about it. We just told them to go back and cut. We didn't give them any direction. So I'm kind of wondering how you kind of rationalize, you know, that I should support that, because we did know that number. We didn't tell them anything. And it seems a little unfair right at the last minute here to kind of go back to them and say 7%. So I'm just kind of wondering your comments on that.
All right. Go ahead, Councillor Jolly. You can close and convince Ray.
Thank you. You know what, I actually agree with Councillor Hanson and Councillor Mackay in that we should have given them a target. I guess the benefit of the timing is that they are not going to be able to reopen until stage 2. We don't have a date for stage 2, so they have a lot of time to respond to this. We're we're making decisions as we go. I really applaud Mr. Bailey for saying that they are open to making further cuts. So absolutely, if they can see the kind of savings that we're seeing in other areas above 7%, that really shows kind of a dedication to our relationship with them and the understanding that we're all tightening our belts. So that's really all I have to say to close. Thank you.
All right, I did, if you look in your chat, Mr. LaFleur has asked the Ledge office to please drop this motion word for word into the chat. So I'm assuming, Mr. LaFleur, you want us to see it word for word before we vote on it?
Yes, it just seemed to me listening, this is a pretty important motion and there should be absolutely no doubt about what you're voting on. So if we could take a moment until it appears.
Yeah, I'm going to allow for that because I think you're absolutely right. There we go. Councillor Jelly, read it one more time.
That $313,000 of the budget previously allocated to the St. Albert Public Library be redirected to the stabilization fund for the 2020 year to support any deficit that may or may not occur as a result of COVID-19.
All right, and we've had the thorough debate on this, so I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor? Hands up. So I'm counting Councillor Jolly, Councillor Broadhead, Councillor Hughes, and Mayor Herron in favor, and opposed. I got Councillor Mackay, Councillor Watkins, and Councillor Hanson. So that passes by majority and a recorded vote. All right. I've also, oh no, we can move on, but I've also asked Cheryl to draft up a quick motion to convene the special council meeting so we can vote on that today. But we can go to the Arts and Heritage. Councillor Jolly, do you want to do that one as well?
Sorry, if I may interrupt, Mayor. The council doesn't make a motion for special council meetings. That's your prerogative alone to call them. You can informally canvass them. So what the motion would simply be that the final decision on the budget adjustments 2020 be deferred to a special meeting to be called by the mayor.
Okay, if we can just get that drafted, that'd be great. Sorry, Councillor Hughes did the first one, Councillor Jolly did the second one. Does anyone want to do the third one, or? Go ahead, Councillor Hughes. Doesn't really matter to me.
All right, going for more wins.
Going for
here.
another win.
Going for a win. That $226,700, the budget previously allocated to the Arts and Heritage Foundation, be redirected to the stabilization fund for 2020 year to potentially any deficit that may or may not occur as a result of COVID-19.
All right. Let's go ahead, Councillor. Sorry, I'll let Councillor Hughes open.
I just appreciate that the work that
We
they
didn't
put
have
forward to
questions,
this, and I'm comfortable with the number that they brought forward.
Okay. Councillor Mackay, did you want to add to debate?
Well, I was just trying to get it before. Could I not question that particular motion? Like have a question in relation to that motion before you entered into debate?
Gone through questions, but I will allow it.
Yeah, no, but I just assumed that we would have, because you were taking them one after another, that we would have we'd have a point to ask a question.
Yeah, no, I can. I mean, I asked for questions on Councillor Jolly's because it was different from what we'd seen earlier, but
I guess what my point is, and I guess it came up to something that you identified. I mean, again, you know, they went and found 12% of their budget, and we've just asked the library to do 7%. So why are we not potentially lowering them down to 7%?
I can answer why I didn't increase it.
That wasn't Councillor Hughes's motion, right?
Well, I know, but I guess that's my inquiry. You know, it probably enter in debate, but I mean, I think you mentioned, Councillor Hughes, in the initial conversation that you said that they found it and that's what they presented. But I'm just saying, I think they would obviously also, because they open up in phase one as well, they could also benefit from a 4% reduction. So why are we not just going across the board doing 7%?
Because I asked them if they needed to revise their budget different, that they've had new information, and they said they're still comfortable with having that reduction. So I'm not about to leave money off the table if they're saying that they can still do this with 226,000, which confirmed today.
Yeah, I'm just relating it back to fairness again. If we've identified 7%, why don't we go 7% across the board? So, you know.
I'm going to interrupt you for 2 seconds. We have a motion on the floor. If you want to amend it, go ahead. But you have a motion.
Well, I mean, I want to win too, but I'm just saying is I mean, why don't we have some, I can amend it to say that, but I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm not as well prepared as Councillor Jolly based on the fly to identify 7%. So I don't have the actual numbers.
Councillor McCarthy, do you really want to make that amendment?
No, I'll talk about it in debate.
Okay. Well, you know what? You're in debate right now. So,
Okay, well, I was in questions, but I can continue in debate. If you allow me
continue.
to. I guess you got the gist of where I was going with it. I mean, and it goes back, I guess, to the fairness of it. I mean, why are we, I mean, I know that they did find 12%, but I think it bases on the uniqueness of their situation. They lost 73% of their revenues. They also identified that they have different staffing and that their staffing actually was able to take advantage of some of the federal programs, which so far, to Mr. Bailey's knowledge, he couldn't access. So they were able to maybe, and you can't compare a library to an Arts and Heritage Foundation. So to say that they found 12% and that, so I'm just saying is that potentially we, that we could have ended up. So, but saying that, I'm not going to take the 12% off the table, but at the same time, I'm using this opportunity to talk about fairness again. So anyways, I'm going to support the motion, but at the same time, I want to talk about the fairness of it.
And I think you made your point. Like, I understand. Councillor Jolly, do you want to get into debate? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm going to support this motion. Councillor McKay, to your point, nothing about this is fair. This is unfair on all of our community partners, our outside agencies. It's hard on all of our businesses. It's hard on all of our residents. Nothing about this is fair. And so I think it's really on us to make sure that, if HF says they can do 12%, to trust them. And personally, I don't want to push them further than that. I'm happy with that number, and I'm delighted that they've been, most of their services have been kind of given the nod for stage 1 for the reopen, because what Ms. Ramsden said about gallery space being kind of a good option for starting to get our toes wet in terms of getting out in public again is true. When you go to an art gallery, you're not, tight with lots of other people like you are for an event at the Arden or a program at the library or swimming lessons or all of that kind of thing. So, so I will be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Anyone else want to enter into debate? Councillor Hanson, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just like to, I will be supporting this motion and appreciate that AHF has done this work. I just, really disappoints me that we keep comparing these two organizations like they're the same. We fund the library. The library has a board. They make financial decisions. And they came back with a revised budget as asked, and so did AHF. And I don't think that we should be comparing these two organizations. And that's all I'll say.
Anyone else on debate? I'll echo what you just said, Councillor Hanson. They are very, very different organizations. They just tend to get grouped together so frequently because they are the biggest external agencies that we fund. But you're right, they are managed and run very differently, and their governance is different. And we need to avoid that kind of comparison. So, who made this motion again? Councillor Hughes to close.
Thank you. Absolutely, they're different organizations and they have different budgets. For example, they only have a 4-month window for some of their, or some even less than that for some of the services they provide, depending on which site they're managing. But I'm comfortable with what they brought forward right now. And that is the issue right now, not whether or not it's a library versus that. I believe that Councillor Jolly brought forward the library motion, not based on a comparison to HF, but rather comparison to what the city is currently putting forward as their standard. And at the time that we brought this forward a month ago, things were a lot different. We didn't have a budget goal across the city to try to figure out how to manage the crisis, that's the economic crisis we currently are in. So I think that Councillor Jolly's motion is reflective of the time of the day, which was just been recently changed to our budget goal. And they have said that they're quite clear that they don't require more money to be able to function adequately throughout this season. So I'm willing to respect that and recognize that we need to be as cognizant as possible about the amount of dollars we're putting out there, because everybody's going to matter about how much we're charging. So for taxes, that's it. Thank you.
All right, call for the vote. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's unanimous. Okay. Where are we? That's it. Okay, so Cheryl, do you have a, there we go. Oh, it's not Cheryl, but we have legend. So there we go. So can I have someone make the motion that's in the chat? It says that the final decision on the budget adjustment be postponed to a meeting called by the mayor. Councillor Henson, you want to read that in?
That the final decision on the budget adjustments be postponed to a meeting called by the mayor.
All right. And I will call that meeting for 9 a.m. on Monday, May 11th. And that works for everybody? Okay, hopefully it shouldn't be much more than an hour. So, and do you have anything to add to that, Councillor Hanson?
Nope.
Anyone else? All right, call for the vote. All right, that's unanimous. I am just going to ask council that Councillor Hughes has already submitted her motion, her intentions. If anyone has any other intentions, I think it's only fair to get them into Diane and Kevin. Give me a deadline, Diane. I know you'd rather them sooner rather than later, but you know,
Yeah, I'd suggest maybe tomorrow at the latest.
Okay, tomorrow by 5 o'clock. Great.
Oh, wow, I'll have mine in earlier than that.
I think we all know what we're thinking. I don't think it should take a lot of thought. So anything after tomorrow at 5 o'clock, I just don't think we can entertain, because it's not fair to our staff. Because we need to make this decision Monday so we can do the tax rate bylaw on the 19th. All right. I'm going to call a 5-minute break because we've been at this for 2 hours. Sorry, 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 4:05. Is that right? 4:05. Okay. Holly? You still here? Is Will still here?
Wes, I like all this stuff behind you. Looks great.
Whoever the host is, can you allow us to start our videos?
Natalie, thank you for that. I should do this because everybody will know what's on the back shelf there. If they're a diabetic, they see my Sharps containers and anyway, I'll rearrange it so it looks better at least one day.
I think it looks great. I like it.
I figured if Ray can look good, I can look good too.
That looks sharp, Ken.
Ken's got a bow tie on with his sweater now. I really probably should go put on my Rogue Council shirt. You got competition, Ray. Look at Ken.
Oh, I'd like to know where you got your haircut, Sheena. It looks good.
I have it just pulled back. It's just, it's so long, I can pull it back now.
Oh, okay.
That's all there is
I
to
was
it.
gonna say, gee, new haircut.
No,
Mine's
it's
looking
very
kind of
short,
shiny.
Ken. Very short.
Can't
No.
hear him.
Let Randy do it.
No. No, it's just pulled back.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Okay, it's 4:05. We got Natalie there. I don't see her.
I am. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You want to turn your video on, or do you don't want us to see you? There we go.
Sorry, I turned it off when we went on recess and turned it back on.
Okay. So I feel like we are done with budget adjustments. Am I right? Where's Kevin? We lost Kevin.
I'm here. I gotta start my video. Sorry.
Okay. Are we good? We're done with the budget adjustments. Do you need anything else?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, we're gonna move on to 7.4. Cheryl, is Dana in the waiting room?
Mayor Herron, I'm just wondering, it says, I'm getting a big screen that says this meeting is in recess. Is that what the public's getting?
We're just trying to get a hold of IT to get them to start it up again.
Oh, their coffee breaks are longer than our coffee
There
breaks.
you go. And Dana is in the meeting now.
Okay, so council, we all received a email from Mr. Papadinets earlier today, and it came in before 10 a.m., which is our deadline, and he did say he was available to speak. Cheryl called him back and asked if he would like to. He has requested that he can. So this is now, we're on agenda item, recreation parks and culture facilities and programs events during the pandemic. So Dana, Dana wants to speak on the playgrounds, I assume, Dana? Okay, so you have 5 minutes, so go ahead.
There, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Although
perfect.
I'm disappointed you're not wearing a Star Wars shirt.
I am. I saw the bow ties and thought I should try to spruce up a little bit before the video chat. So
wow, Ray outdid me today. So.
In 50 seconds because I stole some of your time. Go ahead.
No worries. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for allowing me to speak today regarding 7.4. I don't think it's probably any surprise that I've contacted the city again regarding playgrounds, as I've been a pretty outspoken proponent about the decision to close them. After the provincial government announced on Thursday regarding Alberta's relaunch plan, I was hopeful that the city imposed moratorium on the playgrounds would be lifted either effective immediately or at the very least during phase 1 as early as May 14th. So when I saw the mayor's tweet on the 2nd outlining from an email from Alberta Health had advised not to open the playgrounds because disinfecting between each use and social distancing would not be implemented, I was a little bit disheartened, to say the least. So ultimately, the email from Alberta Health, which I haven't seen obviously, but I do find the decision troubling, first and foremost because cleaning in between each use on a play structure is an impossible standard to maintain. So I believe that that language there is purposeful on a part of the government to allow an opportunity not to open playgrounds. And secondly, I do find it questionable that Alberta Health would provide such strict guidance that would go, that does not really follow what Dr. Dina Hinshaw has said in terms of outdoor activity. To date, I have not seen anything from the CMOH that outlines there has been a required closure on outdoor play structures. And even the backgrounder specifically references the order that was order CMOH 02/2020. And perhaps administration is interpreting child play centers as outdoor playgrounds. I don't know, I can't speak for administration, but in press briefings and the like, the CMOH has said repeatedly that what she was referring to with respect to child's play structures was indoor areas like UPlay, indoor playground areas. So ultimately, I think that we know that the risk of transmission outside is very, very exceptionally low. And even with the CMOH's guidelines regarding long-term care visits in the next week, where you can have outdoor visits with 2 people at long-term care facilities, I think that highlights how unlikely transmission happens outside. Ultimately, I think, again, regarding playgrounds, when the province announced last Thursday that that private campgrounds, for example, can be opened, I had a conversation with our RV resort operator and talked about the guideline document that they received from Alberta Health, and there was no mention of playgrounds or closing of those playground structures. It was really structured around closing and ensuring there was no access to public bathrooms or public showers. So, anywho, like I said, the best available evidence shows that there's very little risk of transmission outdoors. The CMOH has not ordered playgrounds to be closed. St. Albert, as of today, has 4 active cases. Edmonton has 3. Children are even lower risk of transmission. There was actually an article published on CBC Today out of Australia that was highlighting that children under 10 are unlikely to be super spreaders of the virus. But all that said, I'm not here to debate evidence with you regarding COVID. I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm not a virologist, and I'm not an infectious disease expert. I have a solid science background, but the city does not employ epidemiologists, infectious disease experts, or virologists. So as a municipality, I do strongly believe that we should be taking direction from the Chief Medical Officer of Health and provincial regulations. And again, just to highlight, there has been no orders from the CMOH to close playgrounds, and there are a multitude of municipalities across Alberta and even in the capital region that have not closed playgrounds, Morinville being our closest example. They provided education around physical distancing and best use practices and discouraging use of the playgrounds, but they have not physically closed them. I know that this is a politically sensitive issue for all of you, and I'm sure you're getting emails and calls daily about you're not doing enough to stop the spread of the disease, you're doing too much to stop the spread of the disease. So it's a very difficult balance to find, and I appreciate that. But when the city elected to close those structures, it took away my option as a parent to weigh the risks and benefits of taking my kids to the park. And I think that we can all agree that children need physical activity, and I think the people being hardest hit by this are those of, financial difficulties or living in an apartment complex where they don't have yard space to encourage spontaneous outdoor play. Going for a walk is not stimulating for kids. I mean, I have 3, an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 10-month-old, and the walks are exciting for about 35 seconds before we get to the end of the street. So just to wrap up, I'll say that I genuinely believe that the intention to close the playgrounds was good back on the 20th or 22nd of March. Evidence was limited at that time regarding the spread of COVID and the impact on kids in particular. And there were many unknowns with the disease. So of course, administration and councils and governments across the planet were erring on the side of caution. That said, it certainly was a knee-jerk reaction. And I think it was done like Beaumont had did, like Edmonton had did, like Calgary did, to show that there was something being done at a municipal level to help stop the spread of the disease. During times of crisis, I think it's beholden to all of us to ensure that decisions that are being made are evidence-based.
You're long past your 5 minutes now.
Okay, this last sentence. I think that, again, evidence-based decisions in the interest of the best of everybody, and closing the playgrounds really doesn't check either of those boxes. And I really would encourage council to walk back that decision and allow parents to make that decision themselves. Thank you. Sorry for going long.
It's hard because I don't have a timer in front of me, but
indeed, yeah.
I'm going to jump in. I'm going to allow every member of council to ask questions and stuff, but let me jump in just a bit in that we have you might be right that the decision on May 22nd was based a little bit on politics of what was going on in the region. And today I was involved with the Chamber of Commerce roundtable, and there was some stressing about trying to coordinate within the region. So you're right, Morinville might be a bit of an outlier, but everyone else is pretty much closed. And when City of Edmonton does something like that, if we kept our playgrounds open, we could potentially be attracting non-residents to our city, which would even increase the risk more if they're coming to use our playgrounds. But saying that, politically, I would tell you, and this is just my communication with my residents, I've had more requests to keep them closed than to open them. There was a bit of a St. Albert chat conversation going on about a week ago, encouraging residents to email council and pressure them to open the playgrounds. We got more people emailing us saying keep them closed. But again, it's about your decision as a parent to do this. So consistent with the CMHO's guidelines is what we've been trying to do and follow all along. And when we get an email from Alberta Health, and if you're going to open up your playgrounds, this is what you need to do. And that cleaning, although might be unrealistic, is now kind of our marching orders. And I'm going to actually maybe let Mr. Lafleur or Mr. Scoble jump in and talk about risk when we actually have advice from Alberta Health on our path forward. We didn't have that advice on March 22nd. We have it now, which makes it even harder to open them up. I don't know if Kevin or Mr. Lafleur wants to jump in.
I'll let Mr. Lafleur speak to it if he wishes to.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't take too long. I think, Mayor Herring, you've hit the nail right on the head. Our presenter was also correct in saying that there is nothing in any order, and there are two different orders, by the way, and they're both attached to this council report that bear upon this issue. There's nothing in either of them that specifically says thou shalt close thy playgrounds. There are, of course, the requirements about physical distancing that we're all familiar with, and, you know, limitation on no more than 15 people in one place. And presumably one could try to run playgrounds under that. However, the mayor is correct. We have asked, our people from the EOC have asked and have received a response from the experts at Alberta Health saying, if you're going to open, these are the things you need to do. And they're extremely difficult measures and very expensive measures to try to maintain, about, extremely frequent sanitizing. And so, yes, on a liability perspective, if we open in the face of flaunting that expert advice, and if, heaven forbid, someone is infected and it can be traced back to us, our liability is very large. So we have to take that into account. I'm not saying that's the only thing to take into account, but it's a very important factor to take into account in determining what to do. Should the CMOH determine that, we have more information now, we're learning that it's not as much of a risk, and give us the go ahead to open playgrounds, that changes the calculus completely. But that has not yet happened.
And I think there's some conflict too between Alberta Health's advice, and that is the advice we're following, and Alberta Emergency Management Association. So we are struggling as a municipality to try to balance these two things, but Alberta Health is our go-to for advice. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jolly sit on the Emergency Advisory Committee, and they can attest that we've added playgrounds to our agenda every week. We're going to talk about this every week because we want them open. I get emails from young single moms that they're going crazy. We want to open them as soon as possible. We just have to try to figure out when. And I do see it slightly different from sitting at a seniors facility in two lawn chairs talking to your relative, because there's a lot of touch points with the playground. And although kids might not be affected by the virus, they can carry it. And snotty noses and dirty hands on a slide is a perfect place to transmit. And we don't hire any epidemiologists, but you got to remember your mayor's got a degree in microbiology. So.
I know, of course. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to respond, but I'll just say that I completely understand the liability perspective, and I guess that's why it's somewhat frustrating that they were closed or continue to be closed to begin with. But from my perspective as a parent, I struggle with the logic around if they were such a risk for cluster transmission or for disease transmission, even with the high touch points, I really feel like the CMOH would have made a stronger mandated order to have them closed, which again, why I was surprised by the direction from Alberta Health and how that hasn't rolled out to places like private camping facilities or even provincial parks that may be open. I'd be surprised if they have their playground structures closed, but I guess we'll see in a month. So
it's hard to back away. I think that's kind of where we're the situation we're faced in. I don't know. Does anyone else on council have a question or comment for Dana?
You've covered it.
Okay, so you and I are in constant contact, Dana. I can keep you informed of how we're trying to mitigate risk and get them open as soon as possible.
Oh, I appreciate that, and thanks for your time.
Okay, anytime. All right, moving on. So we have a couple of, actually quite a few motions in front of us. Do we have a presentation? So this is Carrie. Are you taking over?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a brief verbal to start. Mayor, Council, as per a series of recommendations in front of you today, we're asking Council to consider tying the reopening of our recreation, parks, cultural facilities, program services, and events to Public Health Order 0207/2020 in response to COVID-19. This will hopefully help bring clarity, given that we do not know the dates these health orders will be lifted. The Governor of Alberta released the relaunch plan on Thursday, April 30th. The plan outlined 3 phases, with the first phase beginning May 14th. Each phase specific to our success in Alberta keeping the curve flattened. Points for council consideration. The health orders are still in place and in effect. When looking at the orders, we took the position to keep the parks, green space open and close most of our physical amenities located in the parks. For example, we kept trails, open green spaces and benches open, and closed play structures, picnic structures, and game courts. We're also recommending for consideration that we continue allowing spontaneous play or use of our green spaces, so teams honoring physical distancing and social gathering number restrictions could use sports fields for unorganized plays while maintaining no physical contact, which is the key. We're also not maintaining these fields or outdoor sports facility game standards that allows us to use them to be considered as the same as parks or open space. What we're currently investigating, and this kind of gets into the last presenter and council's comments back and forth, is one of the questions we're continually being asked is, can we open play structures? Administration is continuing to investigate what the accepted health guidelines will be. We have not formally been told what these guidelines will be as of yet. However, we have been suggested that it will involve cleaning and sanitizing. We need to continue to investigate what is our risk if we open before the guidelines come out, even if we sanitize and clean. What about picnic structures, tennis courts, etc.? Again, we're waiting for more details from health, hopefully in the coming weeks. And those are the conversations that we're continuing to have with them. The indoor recreation facilities are a bit clearer, as the government has stated that our rec facilities and arenas are part of provincial plan as phase 3, and the library is probably at phase 2. So I'll leave it at that for right now and open it up for questions.
All right, any questions to start? Councillor Hughes, then Councillor Jolly, then Councillor Hanson.
Thank you. So one of the concerns I have is how long this could be in place. Like Order 2-2020 could be in place well past phase 3. There's no indication that phase 3 and the rescission of this would happen at the same time. So that's where I'm having a hard time with this, is that this order could be in place for 6 months to 2 years.
5 years.
We don't know when it's going to end. So I'm trying to come to terms with why we'd be recommending such a long stay.
Like in terms of the orders, well, and this is the question, is as they open up our facilities, those orders will probably need to be modified and changed, because when Premier was on as part of his relaunch for the province, he did talk about as we move into phase 2, for example, right now we're at social gathering restrictions of 15. He did talk at phase 2, those may be relaxed. And then again at phase 3, he was almost talking about being back to would be able to have events, etc. again, so that would be increased again. So those orders will probably will need to be, I guess, targeted and changed. And that's why, you know, part of the recommendations we're looking at today is part of that EAC discussion. So as these things are changing, then we can react quickly to those modifications.
So you're making the assumption that they're immediately going to change the order if they change something else? Because I mean, we've got additional orders to tighten things up. Past
If I may add to that, the Premier had his press conference on Thursday, and the document called the launch strategy was issued, I think that same day or the next morning. On Friday, there was an amendment to one of the orders. Today, there was another amendment to one of the orders. So I think we're seeing that the Department of Health, and particularly the Chief Medical Officer, is in fact making frequent amendments to try and open things up. So it is happening, but all that the report is saying is, let's be guided by the experts. And if anybody's wondering, the order on Friday dealt with golf courses. The order today dealt with a whole host of health professions. So it was, you know, that they're starting to address one by one various issues. And I think we're going to see that happening. And the recommendation is very specifically that the orders as they may be amended from time to time.
Because my concern is, though, that we're taking everything under this blanket, including things that may not be applicable for 2-2020. So, I mean, I understand things that are larger groups over 50, but for example, we have gazebos and boat docks and firewood provision listed here. And those would certainly not require that level of stringency that we're coming in from waiting until 2-2020 is rescinded. And I don't even know if they'd actually even mention a boat. My understanding is boat docks are open now. They open the old boat docks either the 4th or the 1st. And yet we're saying we're going to keep all boat docks closed. Like, it doesn't seem at the level of everything doesn't fit under this blanket, is what I'm saying. And yet we're keeping it under that scope to that level of, I don't know, what do you call it, tightening.
Well, I think one of the issues, Councillor Hughes, that we did face with this is that this report came out before the relaunch of the provincial of its phases. So some of that information, those are some of those details that we are trying to get from the province in terms of what they mean by this and what they mean by that, and we're trying to get clarity on these things. And those are those discussions that we're continually having with the EAC and through the EOC. So we're trying to get clarity, and that's the issue right now, is that we're like, when they say it's going to be this, we need to get that defined moving forward to what that really means.
So I had a potential amendment to add that, to put on the end of this, to say, or until approved in the Alberta provincial relaunch strategy. So would that be acceptable to add that in there? So that way we have some flexibility regarding being able to open some areas a bit sooner.
I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Lafleur.
Yeah, the only concern I would have with that is that the provincial relaunch strategy has been issued. We've read it. It's a really nice political document. It really sets out what the government wants to achieve. But as with most political documents, it doesn't have the details and the granularity and the specifics. So if we tie our reopening to that document, we probably aren't going to get it amended. Whereas the orders of the Chief Medical Officer, we've already seen, as I mentioned, in the last 2 days, they are getting amended. Things are opening up. So
well, they're getting amended based on the relaunch strategy. The golf courses were listed in the relaunch strategy.
Yes, exactly. But the relaunch strategy is not a legal document. The orders are. So I think it's safer for us to say, let's watch those orders as they're amended or as new ones come out, and we'll react to those as they come out. And as I've said, 2 days, two orders amended. Not bad.
Yeah, but we knew they were coming. So my thing is the order 2-2020, is that the order they've been amending, or have they been amending other orders? Because like you're saying, until this is, as long as 220 is in force and in effect, like this is a very large blanket document. Like we're just sweeping everything under this umbrella, and it's the largest umbrella. So I'm trying to figure out like how we can have some flexibility here, because my understanding was, for example, that boat docks are currently open, and now we're taking boat docks off the table for I don't even know how long. And the province has boat docks open right now. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, the last thing I want to have is every single one of these closed when not everything has to be closed at that time. And so I'm trying to come to terms with this, because I feel like we're punishing people right now.
So, Mr. LaFleur, let me just interject. Would the appropriate motion be to say, you know, align to the order 20 and any subsequent amendments?
Yeah, I had actually suggested that in a private message, and I think that would be far better.
Oh, I missed that. I didn't get that. Okay. But
the question is, do you want to add that to sub motions of 1A, 1B, and 1C, or do you want to add that language to the last one that delegates to the Emergency Advisory Committee?
No.
You could do it either way, but yeah, that would be good language. I agree.
So boat docks is a good example. Where does it say in our motion that we're keeping boat docks shut?
It's in the backgrounder.
Yeah.
In the backgrounder, it says this is what we're interpreting the motion to mean. And it specifically lists like ball diamonds, sports fields, tennis, pickleball courts, gazebos, boat docks, firewood provision platforms. Like, so pavilions, playground structures, everything.
Right.
And so my interpretation is this is what's going to be enacted and when we approve this.
So I think if we add in the wordage in those orders as they're subsequently amended, we would cover that off. And then EAC would meet much more frequently, and we could make those decisions and just react really quickly and open up playgrounds. And like boat docks, was that one of the amendments, Mr. LaFleur? Like, I don't know what they were.
No, the amendments that came out in the last 2 days didn't address boat docks. What is being recommended basically by administration is you set, if you will, let's set a baseline now today, and then if the final recommendation to delegate to the Emergency Advisory Committee the ability to start gradually opening things up, if that also is accepted, then that committee can look at new orders, new recommendations, new information as it comes forward. And as long as you're not contravening an order from the government of Alberta, you can open up more things. It's intended to give the flexibility to do that without having to come back to council, which only meets once every couple of weeks.
I'm not getting that wording though. And that's what I'm trying to, regardless whether or not we approve number 6 for the advisory committee, council could also reopen them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're just simply saying you 3 go decide, but at the same time, we could have a special council meeting and make decisions at the same time as well. So that's not the point. The point is that this is saying that unless the CMOH specifically writes it in writing that these things can be opened, they can't be opened, is what I'm reading from this. But you're telling me a different interpretation than what I'm reading.
If I may just, I don't want to dominate this. I'll try one more time. What administration has said that the way we interpret the orders are in part, but only in part, where certain specific things are ordered to be closed, like the museum, for example. That's an obvious example. Museums are to remain closed, okay? Our museum is closed because that's very specific. But a lot of what is in these orders is open to interpretation. It tells you that there are things that when it says, for example, public recreational facilities, it gives 3 or 4 or 5 examples, but then it uses those magic words, but not restricted to those. So it basically tells us we have to interpret. And then, as I'd mentioned earlier in response to the presenter or my invitation to respond to that, there's also the question of if you have something that's not in an order, but if the experts at Alberta Health recommend it, are you going to just ignore that? It's tough. I realize it's really tough question of interpretation. What should be done where it isn't laid out specifically in black and white, and that's what the recommendations today are attempting as best as they can to do.
Because one more thing is just like everyone's been told if they stay home and stay locked down, this is going to end sooner. And then we are at what, 3 or 4 active cases? We could easily be at 0 before the end of the month, regardless of whatever's happening down south. And yet we could also be saying that we have no active cases, and yet we're not going to change anything. So you're actually, for doing everything that you were asked to do, there is no benefit. In fact, you're being penalized because it's going to continue anyway with 0 cases. I'm like, and so this is where I'm looking at this thinking, I don't see the flexibility here to recognize anything that's different in the situation. Like, this is very troubling to me.
I think, Councillor, I think the flexibility is built in because, right, there, I think Mr. Flower is right. There's some interpretations of the orders that are, that our staff has taken some liberty with. That's probably not the right word, but that's what we've done. And the flexibility comes with, you're right, council could add something to a Monday meeting to open up playgrounds, or the EAC could do it because we meet once or twice a week. There's way more flexibility with what they're presenting today than just tying it to a calendar date. That's my interpretation. Okay. Councillor Jolly had her hand up, and then Councillor Hanson. Is there any more wanting to get in line? Councillor Watkins, you're up after Hanson. Okay. Okay, Councillor Jolly, go ahead.
Thank you. So really my question is kind of along the lines of Councillor Hughes' question. So how does kind of administration propose that, you know, as the orders change, it's kind of easy for us to communicate those changes, but when the interpretations changes. So I think Bodocs is a great example, although it's not explicitly in the orders, we interpreted that way. But now that we know that the province has opened up Bodocs, we know that they're not interpreting it that way. So how do we communicate those changes as they happen?
So good question, Councillor Jolly, and to council members, is that we're continually in contact with Alberta Health. We're continually in contact with Alberta Emergency Management. We're also continually in contact with the major municipalities in Alberta. And we're having those conversations, and we're comparing notes, and we're comparing emails and everything else. And that's where a lot of that comes into play. It's basically looking at those interpretations. And so we can make good informed decisions based on best practices. And that's really where we are right now. Like, for example, we have a letter from the Ag Minister to open farmers markets. And with that, they've kind of given a few very broad-based scenarios around those, keeping the food supplies chain, seeds, seedlings, etc. can be part of that. But that's really it. So right now we're looking at that. We're working on a plan with the chamber, and we're looking at dates. We're looking at locations. We're looking at social distancing. We're looking at all those type of things to make that come into play. So we're making the best decision we can with the information we're given. And we're continually working with health. So when they're sending us the order and says, okay, with play structures, we want to have them sanitized and clean. Well, what does that mean? Well, we get an email saying that every 3 hours. No, what does that mean? So we're constantly challenging those back as well. So we're trying to make the best decisions that we can through those interpretations and to move forward. And I think that's really good communications and conversations that we're also having in the EAC, because it also challenges back from that community lens as well.
And so in terms of communication, the public can expect to see, you know, as things change, just the updated website or social media, or is that the kind
That's
of
correct.
things?
Yes, yeah. Yep, through those postings and social media. We have a very good website on COVID-19, and I think some of the council members are doing a wonderful job with working with the community as well. So yeah, we're trying to move forward and making sure our public has the best information as we get it.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, I had Councillor Hanson next.
Thank you. My questions, I guess, are a little bit along the lines of Councillor Hughes as well. I think that it says in the backgrounder that it's the orders are up for interpretation. In fact, I think it says at the bottom of that page that, let me just get to it. And we cannot provide a specific order or advice for every possible activity under the sun. So I think that is important to remember, but I do wonder if the EAC is talking about the risk for St. Albert, because I think the risk for St. Albert is different than the risk for Calgary. And I'm wondering, at what point in time do municipalities have the opportunity to make some decisions that aren't absolutely mandated by AHS because we think we're ready to do so? I mean, right now playgrounds are not really open in the region besides Morinville, but if we find that we are not transmitting, our cases are flat. I guess what happens if we don't follow CMOH because we feel we're in a position to do so? What is the fallout from that? And I understand that it's risk and there's litigation involved, possibly, if something gets traced back to us, but we're going to be living with this virus for a very, very long time. And so I would say the AHS and CMOH is very, very conservative, and so they should be, because they're talking about provincial standards. But I really want to know what we can do independent of them and when we can take that first step.
Great question, Councillor Hanson. And I think right now, through those debates that are happening at the EAC, and also even within our administration, because we're challenging each other all the time as well. Well, you know, in terms of, well, what does that mean? What is that risk? Is, you know, where someone will say, well, no, we need to take that further, and someone else say, no, we've not done that to date, we're okay. And so those debates are happening right now in terms of our administration ranks and with the EAC. And, you know, they're pushing in terms of, like, the garage sales are a good decision. City of Edmonton banned garage sales. We took the position not to ban them, but to discourage them. The same thing with play structures right now. We took the position to ban the use of play structures during this, but it could get to the point where they will open them with very limited use, and those things will come out as we get a little bit more clear direction on some of these things and what these things mean. But I think you are right. You know, as we move, unless it's specifically tied to a health order, we'll be able to move into a new reality or new normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, Mayor Herron said it in her remarks this morning with the Chamber leadership panel. St. Albert citizens are doing a really, really good job, and everybody's very respectful. I mean, not everybody, but almost everybody is really respectful of what we have to do in order to flatten the curve. And I think that we're going to have to be living like that for a long time, whether or not play structures are open. So, I do look forward to, I don't want to say that AHS is wrong, because they're not, and CMOH is not wrong, but they would be typically very conservative. And so they should be, because they've got a whole province to look after. And I think that we, in a way, need to start taking the pulse of our own community and finding out when they're ready to take some steps. So I'll just say that. But the other question I have, and maybe this is for Mr. Lafleur, is, does Order 07-2020 trump 02-2020? Because there is, when you read that, restaurant guidelines, one says that they should be closed and only for takeout. The other says 07-2020 says 50% capacity that you can dine in. So is there a trumping mechanism here, or is it we have two orders that we need to navigate through?
Well, the general rule is that with any piece of legislation, and I'm treating an order as the equivalent as though it was made by the legislature, it has that same force of law. The general rule of interpretation that any lawyer will tell you this is you try to read them so that they can be harmoniously read together as much as possible. And that isn't always possible. And sometimes the CMOH, and particularly she's done this now 4 different times that I can recall, has said in one order, I am specifically rescinding what I said in a previous order. So yes, if there's something in 07 that came later chronologically that is inconsistent with something in an earlier order, then the later chronological order does trump it, yes. It's just all part of what makes this so maddening to try to tease out the meaning that you really are supposed to take. It isn't always easy to do that.
Yeah, and I guess the trouble that I'm having with all of this is that now those orders are, the latest order 07/2020 is already a month old. And those are the orders. I mean, those are the rules. We've got amendments happening now, but it's maybe not happening fast enough in terms of what's happening in the community. That's where I'll leave it.
All right, I have Councillor Watkins and then Councillor Broadhead up.
Okay, so my question is of Mr. LaFleur. So we can, if we want to as a municipality, we can legally open up playgrounds right now if we want to.
The answer to that is if we can find a way to respect the minimum 2-meter physical distancing and to respect the maximum 15 people in a gathering, if we can, and there's also some other things that are there as well, things about having emergency response and that kind of thing. If we can find a way to respect all of those things that are in order 07/2020, then we can open up playgrounds. I think what Mr. Kerry Hiltz has told you though is that we can do that, but where you're going to find the money is anybody's guess.
Yeah, and we open, but the part about the sanitation and all that, opening up ourselves to more liability, that's our responsibility also, right? But that's not in order. That's just us. That's deciding to do that ourselves to protect ourselves from liability, right?
Well, it's on the advice of Alberta Health. Again, as I tried to, I'll try it one more time. There's things that we're required to do by order, and then there's things that they advise us to do. And if we go against their professional advice, there is some risk involved in that as well.
Right. So that was the thing about the cleaning was their advice, not an order. Right,
it's not an order, it's their professional advice.
And then secondly, so if we approve these motions, then the EAC, could they open up playgrounds whenever they see fit?
Well,
gives them the power to do.
Someone else had better answer. I don't know what EAC has the power to do.
It seems like that's what we're giving them the power to do.
I think if this motion passes, we could absolutely do that. And I'm looking at Kevin, Carrie, but and I would also think that if we're not, if the three of us, Ken, Natalie, and I aren't responding as fast as council would like, they could also make a motion to open up playgrounds. So there's those two avenues.
Yeah, because what that motion indicates is that the EAC be delegated the authority to increase or decrease the restrictions imposed by or otherwise modify any measures set out in a clause through D through A. So they'll give them that opportunity through debate, and if they did see fit to go down a path, they could go down a path, and council then would be able to also do that as well.
So the answer to my question is yes. If we pass this, then EAC can open up parks and that if they so decide.
Well, I guess I would just clarify that the motion says, provided the EAC is acting in response to an order or upon the recommendation of the CMOH or other branch or agency of the government of Alberta.
Right, but the closing of the
We're talking where it's a gray area now, so there's no order about it now. So there's a gray area about can we open up parks. So at this point, the EAC could open up parks if they want if we pass this. Playground structure, I mean, sorry.
Yes, I mean, as per the discussion we've just had, there's again, advice been given, and I guess it'd be up to the EAC whether they want to follow the advice of Alberta Health or not.
Right. And sorry, once again, okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm good. Those are my questions.
All right, Councillor Broadhead.
And council can also open them up, right? Council can also open them up if they choose.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Councillor Broadhead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, actually, Councillor Watkins. That was my question around was around E, and whether or not the EAC should be delegated that authority on behalf of council, because we're having this debate here. I'm just wondering how that plays out in practice. So an order comes out, EAC deliberates on whether or not, I hate to use the playground as an example because that's been beat to death, but if EAC says to do so, What does, how does that play out liability wise? I mean, I get it that we all have directors liability insurance, all that sort of stuff, and the EAC's protected, all those sorts of things. But as a community, how does that play out? And I'll give you my example, and then you can respond, maybe whoever wants to do that. So I got an email from a resident here the other day, and he was quite upset. Got out with his wife, went for a nice walk for spring day. They're out walking down the sidewalk, run up against a group of young people who were not self-distancing, and they had no intention to do so. And when asked to move, weren't really in favor of moving. And so this gentleman was not happy. His response to me was this. He says, for a young person, catching COVID-19 may in fact be an inconvenience. For an older couple who are immune compromised, catching COVID-19 may in fact be a death sentence. So how do we play that out in the picture of EAC making decisions in relation to these sorts of things, when in fact there's always going to be gray areas? So how does that play out?
Well, to me, I think that's part of the, Councillor Broadhead, that's part of that debate and part of the advice that administration be given. So administration felt strongly that something was that should not be done. We'd lay that best recommendation on the table. It'd be up for the EAC to debate that and make that decision. And just like any decision that a council makes for a recommendation as well, not to say that if you get 7 out of 10 recommendations approved as administration, you're doing really well. And the same type of thing would go for there. They'd have to weigh that community want and need over the administration best advice at that time.
Yeah, fair enough. So I guess my question is that giving an undue burden to the 3 that are sitting on the AC when perhaps council as a whole should be making that decision?
I'll leave that for your debate from council to council, from the AC to council, how comfortable they are with that burden.
From a strictly legal perspective, it doesn't matter. Either way, you've hit the nail on the head, Councillor Broadhead. Anything we do, if a person is injured or harmed or tries to make an argument that there's a causal link, right, to what we did, I mean, we get sued all the time. Right? At any given time, there are lawsuits out there. People come up with, or lawyers really come up with all kinds of creative ways why we should be liable. There's no reason to believe they do any different here, right? So, is there liability on the city? Yes. Liability on individual council members, whether they're acting as a committee or as a whole council? No, there's not. If you're acting in good faith, making your best decision on the facts known to you, you're not personally liable. Your city could be. But there's no getting around that. There's just no getting around that. That's the hand we're dealt.
And I would also add, Wes, that the EAC is erring on the side of caution rather than being, the only decision I can think that was maybe not as cautious was the garage sales. But other than that, and of course, I think if we continue to err on the side of caution, and it's not going fast enough for council, they want the playgrounds open, they want other things to be relaxed sooner rather than we still have council as that backup to push it to go faster. I think we're erring on the slow side just to be cautious, but we have that backstop of council motions. The reason I like this motion is because council is really only meeting every second week now. And so EAC can relax these restrictions much faster, that's all.
Yeah, I have great faith in the EAC members. Don't hear me wrongly. It's just I wanted to explore whether or not there was a requirement for council to make some decisions, and I'm hearing not, so I'm okay with that.
Okay, I saw Councillor Mackay's hand go up. Councillor Watkins, did you also want to get in?
Sure. Are we in debate, I guess, now?
No, we haven't put the motion on the floor. This is questions.
Questions? Okay, I'm good for now.
Okay, Councillor Mackay.
Well, I mean, I guess mine's more of a comment than a question in a sense of that. But I mean, it goes back. I mean, this is great discussion and I appreciate it because, I mean, obviously we're in unprecedented times and we need to have these good discussions because we need some clarity over it. But I guess as somebody who's spent his whole career enforcing legal documents, sometimes you just don't get the clarity that you would like to have. Try taking a restraining order that says may, and then put your own interpretation on that. So I would just caution everybody that there's a difference between an order under the Public Health Act and advice, and where we can, with this potential change in the way that we're allowing EAC to have a little bit more of a role, is around the ability to make those interpretations quite quickly. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, right now, our MES and to some extent the RCMP could potentially be responsible, well, they are responsible for enforcing those things. So Councillor Broadhead, to your example, I mean, realistically wise, they should have contacted the MES members who would then have responded and enforced the order. And as we know that right now, all we're doing is we're finding that education works, but in some cases you have to use a bigger hammer. And this order 072020 provides our MES and the RCMP with that ability, where all we're trying to do with this is, administration is trying to do is basically remove the time frame and allow EAC to be more responsive. So I just want to make sure that this is a great discussion, but we got to realize what we're talking about here. When we have a public health order, we have to enforce it. If there's some ambiguity around it, at least that's what the EAC can start to look at if we're starting to get into advice versus an actual order. And so far, I've been very comfortable with the way that the orders have been modified based on the province's relaunch. But good discussion so far. And I know that wasn't really more of a question, it was more of a comment.
All right, I did get a message from Councillor Jolly that she's ready to make the motion when it's time, but I see Councillor Hughes has a question.
Thank you. So I look at Calgary, for example, and Calgary, in spite of being technically a hotspot in Alberta, has reopened the tennis courts. So like, yet we're coming forward with this saying that we won't do it till CMOH says they can, but obviously Calgary says that they're interpreting it as they can. So I'm trying to figure out, I can't figure out what we're doing here, because it looks like we're just going to say we're just going into lockdown as if we're actually Wuhan ourselves, but other communities are interpreting this to allow things to open. And so like, I don't know where to go with this, quite frankly, because this is a nice safe way to say we're just blanket doing nothing until the CMOH allows you to. But at the same time, other communities are saying, yeah, the CMH is not stopping us. So like tennis courts are open in Calgary.
And so I don't think that, Councillor Hughes, that's
what I'm trying to figure out is, do we actually have, like, they're not obviously requiring this order for their council to move forward. So what I would love to see is some kind of alternate one that does not have this restriction in there. Because I realize that Councillor Mackay has, this is before the debate, because I'm concerned about these coming forward. He's like, oh, the EAC can be responsive, but the EAC can only do it in response to an order or change from the CMOH. It doesn't say you can just do whatever you want as you interpret. That like your permission is quite restricted. And so,
Carrie, was tennis courts under an order?
Yes, so they're part of that limited to language within the order. So a few weeks ago, Leduc asked the question. They received a response back from Health saying that tennis courts, pickleball courts, and skateboard parks are part of that order.
Right. So they have it open in spite of that?
And that's what we'll have to get clarification on. That's the thing. We're in constant conversations, and now we know that Calgary is opening up. That's going to be part of that broader discussion now.
And I think I
So-
would touch on you, Councillor Hughes, or any one of these members of council. I did not know about Calgary, and that is interesting.
Just today,
Just today. Okay, so
just today.
you know, send anyone on EAC or Kevin an email saying, "Did you know that Calgary opened up the tennis courts?" So that can be added to our conversation.
But there's an important distinction here and one that we're getting caught up on. And again, I mean, they've opened it up with conditions. They've allowed singles, providing you follow the rules of distancing, no more than 15. They've allowed singles pickleball too. So again, you're playing singles, you're not playing doubles, you're not, you know, so they put their own restrictions, which we will be able to do through this change in what we're asking to do. You know,
So, Mr. LaFleur, regarding the liability of playgrounds, if we were just to put a sign saying that you're to use this at your own risk and that these are not being sanitized, wouldn't that also preclude people to make their own decisions? I mean, if people have concerns about playgrounds, they're welcome not to use them.
That would help, but if it came to, you know, litigation, a sign like that, when you know that playgrounds are used by children who don't read signs, it really wouldn't protect you much. So their
parents do.
We're going to be at some risk no matter what we do.
Okay, so the last question is, so with the boats, the sports fields, when I read this, people can't go into sports fields, they can't go into ball diamonds even spontaneously? No, just in groups?
No, we can. Basically, what we've done with our Sports Foods Council use is that we've opened them to spontaneous play. So if a team decides that decides to go and practice or something, they can go as long as they're under 15 people. They maintain social distancing and they're no contact. So, or if you want to go with your 3 kids out to a couple of kids out to a sports field, you go and play catch or bunt the ball or whatever you want to do. Those fields are open to the public. We just have to maintain the group restrictions and the social distancing and make sure that there's no contact.
So why does the backgrounder say something different then? It says they'll remain closed for as long as these orders are in place. So that's what those should actually be, is compatible with the number D, which would do it as long as we maintain restrictions.
So we've also put in there too within the report saying that that basically, because we're not maintaining them to sports field standards, we're considering them to be open space right now, so they would be open to play. So, but we don't. So that's basically that difference, is that if we had them as we're maintaining them to be sports fields, like an actual ball diamond, we're saying it's going to be only used as a ball diamond, and for use, then you could say that facility is closed. However, we're taking it to say that it's open space right now.
So are boat docks also going to be considered open space?
Well, this is going to be this is the thing as part of that debate with the EAC right now, and we, you know, unfortunately, because of the timing of this report, we weren't able to get all of that information, and we have been told by Alberta Health or the EMAC that they'll be able to get further clarification out to us later this week.
Because this is, I mean, as just a resident, this is so confusing right now, where it's like, it's closed, but you can use it, but you can't use it, but you can use it to 6 people or less people. They're so far apart. Like, it's like mixed messaging here. We say they're closed, but they're open. So, I mean, this is, do we really have to make this decision today? Could we not just wait until the 19th? Because everything is close to the 31st anyway, and get better clarity about what's going on here?
If you do that, then EAC can't open the boat docks and tennis courts on Thursday, which is our next meeting. Like, we could do this sooner.
Well, couldn't council just have a special meeting and open everything up too?
I think a special council meeting is a lot more difficult than the EAC.
Yeah, I realize that, but
yeah, we could.
I'm just thinking, like, these are large decisions, as it turns out. I mean, it seems minor, but everything seems major now. So I personally have a problem putting all the onus and responsibility on 3 members of council, because whether people like it or not, it's all going to fall on the 3 of you. And I think that this should be a council decision on some of these things. Although it's a lot easier just to say, hey, you guys make up your mind and I can just ride behind you. I'd rather have the difficult decisions being made by all council than just saying, go ahead and do whatever you want. Not that I don't distrust what you're saying. I just don't think that there should just fall on 3 people.
Mayor Herron, can I suggest that we kind of go through the motions? If it fails, then we can kind of go to the special meeting of council.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I know you're waiting. I'm just trying to let Councillor Hughes get her questions out of the way. And I'm hoping to just pass all, whatever, of them all at once, but we can split them if need be. But I think probably, they're still related. But
Councillor Jolly, were you planning to put the amendment that says it's in force in effect or amended on your motions?
I can, that's friendly. I mean, I think that's the spirit of the motion is as it's amended, we'll open things.
Okay, thank you.
So Mr. LaFleur, we need to get the wording on that. So currently it reads, and we're looking at anything that mentions the order 02-220 or 07-220, and then we just need to insert the words or subsequently amended.
Yeah, as amended from time to time is the usual. Yeah, sure. I'll throw that into the chat.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor, I'm looking around. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, I'm going to allow Councillor Jolly to move the motions, and then we can split if we need be. But why don't you read them all in at once, Councillor Jolly? I'll take a break because it's going to take you a while to read them, and then we'll get into
faster than anyone else. That's why I volunteer.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so that the following measures related to the City of St. Albert's response to the COVID-19 pandemic be approved: A, indoor, outdoor recreation and cultural facilities that fall within the scope of Order 2/2020 issued by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, CMHO, both municipally operated and partner operated, shall remain closed to the public for so long as the current provisions of Order 2/2020 remain in force and effect. B, all current bookings for events or activities in municipally operated or partner operated indoor, outdoor recreation and cultural facilities within the scope of CMHOH Order 2/2020 are canceled, and no new bookings in such facilities are allowed for so long as the current provisions of Order 2/2020 remain in force and in effect. All scheduled city-led, city-sponsored, or city-approved events, both one-time and recurring events that fall within the provisions of CMOH Order 7/2020 with respect to maximum size of gatherings and mandatory physical distancing restrictions or prohibitions on mass gatherings, or the requirements of physical distancing set out in Order 7/2020 issued by the CMOH, including Canada Day festivities and other summer events and festivals, but not including the weekly St. Albert Farmers Market, are canceled, and no such new event shall be allowed or approved by the City of St. Albert for so long as the current provisions of Order 7/2020 remain in force and effect. D, that parks, trails, and green spaces in St. Albert shall remain accessible to the public for spontaneous use, provided that the provisions of CMOH Order 7/2020 with respect to maximum size of gatherings and mandatory physical distancing are compiled with by users. I'm not sure what that was supposed to be. For so long as the current provisions of CMOH Order 7/2020 remain in force and effect. E, the Emergency Advisory Committee, EAC, established under the city's emergency management bylaws hereby delegated the authority to increase or decrease the restrictions imposed by or otherwise modify any measures set out in clauses A through D of this resolution, and to instruct the CAO to implement any such increase or decrease to or other modification of any such restrictions, provided the EAC is acting in response to an order of or upon the recommendation of the CMOH or any subsequent amendments or other branch or agency of the Government of Alberta. Do you want me to do 2, 3, and 4 as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2, that the Community Services Advisory Committee, CSAC, grant review and allocation recommendations for the 2020 spring grant intake be postponed until the regularly scheduled fall 2020 CSAC meeting for the following grants: community events grants, athlete and artist development grants, and the community capital grant. At 3, that the Lieutenant Governor Distinguished Young Artist Legacy Program be deferred until the spring of 2021, and that the unallocated 2020 budget amount be added to the principal amount as per policy CCS 10. 4, that Council Motion AR 2098 is rescinded.
Okay, and then Mr. LaFleur put at the end of recommended motions 1A, 1B, and 1C, add the words as amended from time to time. And also in each of these motions, remove the word current. Councillor Jolly, take that as friendly?
That's friendly, yep.
Okay, so we got the motions on the floor. I'll accept them. So now they're owned by council. Does anyone want to split any of them out? Councillor Jolly, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm going to start it with Councillor Hughes kind of addressing that backgrounder with all the lists. I can't remember if I CC'd council on my concerns with the list. I know, even since Thursday, that list has changed. So having a list like that makes it very confusing to residents. And you're absolutely right that boat docks were sort of addressed accidentally in the announcement Thursday. But again, this list was made prior to that announcement. So what this does is gives the EAC kind of that flexibility to act more quickly than council perhaps could, in terms of making sure that we're responding as much as we can. And even looking at, say Calgary opened up their tennis courts. Well, maybe that's been kind of removed from those directives that we received from AHS. In terms of playgrounds, the email that we received from Alberta Health Services said that unless there can be a cleaning and disinfecting of equipment between uses and social distancing implemented, it is advised that municipalities continue to have their playgrounds remain fenced, closed off at this time. If we can get an update from them saying it's like, hey, this email that we sent to you on May 1st is no longer applicable, that's great, let's open our playgrounds. And so really giving us that flexibility. These orders, like Mr. LaFleur was saying, are changing every day. And it is quite challenging to keep up, but we want to be able to keep up as quickly as possible, open things up as quickly as possible, and do so with kind of the information that we have. Councillor Hanson, you commented about, are we looking at risk in terms of our decisions, or our decisions kind of within the committee, and absolutely. Our first mandate, though, is to follow what the law says we have to do. And after that, the garage sales was a great example. People were behaving themselves. There's no order saying garage sales are not allowed. So there was no kind of impetus for us to say these are banned in St. Albert. I guess to anyone who wants to make a motion to make any particular change in council, I would say that I would support waiving notice of motion for that. So, if Kathy, you're feeling, or Mayor Herron, you're feeling a burning desire to open playgrounds, Councilor Mackay and I aren't agreeing with you in EAC, you make that motion, I would absolutely support waiving notice so that we can debate that in full council. And I'd also want to comment that summer is coming, and with summer, I think we're still going to be seeing updates to orders as things emerge. And we're not in session from mid-July until mid-August, and we still want to be opening up things during that time if we can, and that gives us that flexibility. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. I did see Councillor Mackay's hand go up to get into debate. Go ahead.
Thanks, sir. I'm just trying to unmute there. Thanks. Actually, great opening comments, Councillor Jolly. Actually, you covered off most of the points that I think. I just think it's really maybe important to emphasize or re-emphasize the fact that what the purpose of this report is just to allow us in this time of rapid change, the ability to respond quickly. And we do have mechanisms, as you described, in relation of if we think that we need to actually move it up into council. So there are mechanisms to deal with. And we can already see some of the challenges that we've already identified. You've got one community doing one thing, another community doing another thing. And if anything, that'll only actually speed up the province's response to this, because obviously they're doing it. And because it's the Alberta Chief Medical Officer of Health, I mean, she could choose to set up zones, but then we would have to then man our gates, because, I mean, could you imagine some of the challenges we would have with people moving around the provinces, and then even more confusion as to what you could do in one municipality versus another one. One municipality is barred, one municipality you can do it. So I appreciate the confusion that this causes, but at the same time, I think following the recommendations that is in this backgrounder will allow at least our community to be flexible and be responsive. And we can always, with new virtual technology, the EAC can meet fairly quickly and we can respond to new orders coming down, or even the fact that potentially if hospitalizations and other factors that are guiding the relaunch strategy with the province moves quicker, then we can also respond quicker. And we all want that. We truly all want that. But I do appreciate the frustration that all councillors have and our residents have as well, both for a decision and against the decision.
Councillor Watkins.
Yes, I'm going to support the motions too. I think it allows us some flexibility to respond quickly, to open things up. And I have confidence in the members of the committee that if there's an issue that's larger than 3 of you, that you're going to bring it back to council as a whole. I have full confidence in that. And I also think that the committee and council both have the same, and administration both have the same vision in mind, which is to get things open as quick as possible and as soon as possible. And I think that's key. Is like, I know as a politician, I don't want things to be closed any longer. I want to get things open as quick as possible and as soon as possible. But the number one thing is get things open as soon as possible and quick as possible, but safely for the residents of St. Albert. So I don't want to make decisions that have safety as number one. So if we have to go slow because of safety, that's fine. And I think we have the right people on that committee to make those decisions. And like I said, and I think we all have the same goal in mind, which is to get things open as soon as possible. You know, I don't have little kids anymore, but I still want to get those playgrounds open as soon as possible. So those are my comments, and I'll be supporting it.
All right, anyone else? Councillor Hanson and then Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, I think this whole thing is hard. And we're trying to sort of navigate through the behavior of our residents and legislating behaviors, and it's hard to do, and supporting the province and trying to keep people safe. So I just want to, thank the committee members and administration for your hard work on the EAC, and I think this is an important piece of the flexibility pie that will help us get through this faster. I appreciate all the comments. This is not easy stuff. We have a lot of opinions out there, and we have a lot of people who have vested interests in various activities around the city, and parents who are stuck at home with kids and, who are longingly looking at playgrounds. Just big appreciation to all what you guys are doing, and hopefully we can get through this sooner rather than later. And thanks again to Mr. Scoble and staff.
Councillor Hughes.
Thanks. One of the questions EAC could bring forward is to ask the province if they're planning to have their playgrounds open in the provincial parks when they open. Just ask them, what is their intention? Do they plan to have them locked down as well or not? Because there's playgrounds in provincial parks. So, and if the parks are open, what are going to be their parameters? That would certainly give you some kind of clarity. One of the concerns is just that all the gray areas that are the CMOH that's saying not limited to, I mean, that can blanket everything. And we're a community that has 4 and decreasing cases. And at some point we're going to be at 0. And the risk of having everything being put forward on this also needs to be weighed out. So I think that we need to respect the fact too that our residents are intelligent. They don't want to get sick, that whenever they do move around, they are doing that cognitively. They're not just, they're cognizant about the fact that there's a situation out there they're trying to be respectful from. And so I think that we also need to be able to allow people to make their own decisions about risk. So I'm going to say yes to this because I don't have an alternate, there is no real ultimate motion to this, but I don't think that this 0220 needed to be quite such an umbrella on the delay of making decisions. And while we're saying we're doing this to speed things up, when I read these motions, I interpret it to be the opposite. So I'm going to just do it on blind faith that we're doing this to speed things up. But saying that until that order is in place, everything shut down just seems to be very draconian. And considering that I don't necessarily think that other communities are using this level of a scope order to make their decision making. also, I think there could have been alternate motions brought forward to reflect that. But because I have no other motions in front of me to do something about this, I'll support the motion, I guess, right now. But the first 5 here make me uncomfortable. Well, no, 4 out of the first 5 make me uncomfortable. And I think there could have been a different way to bring this forward to discuss it. And I'm going to say okay to the EAC making the decisions, but I really think that most of them should have been council decisions. As inconvenient as council meetings may be to call as a special meeting, to use the phrase that we keep hearing, this is unprecedented times, which means that convenience is not necessarily the most important issue here, but rather that it's complete council decisions coming forward. But recognizing that we could be going into summer, when things are being made, as Councillor Jolly said, I'm thinking, okay, fine. But there's a lot here that could have been brought forward differently. And it's the gray areas that are leading me to, CMOH is not going to be giving clear direction on every single facility out there. They've already said that, and yet we're relying on them to make decisions for us on those gray areas. And that's where I'm having a problem. But because I've got nothing else in front of me to give me an alternate suggestion how to handle this, I suppose this is the only way forward. Thanks.
Anyone else want to get into debate? Seeing none, I will go to Councillor Jolly to close. Oh, sorry, Councillor, did your hand go up? Councillor Hanson? Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Jolly.
So I didn't address it in my opening comments, but I think it's important to comment on kind of number 2 and 3 of this motion. So delaying grants, community events, the grants for athlete and artist developments, the Young Artists Legacy Program. I'm going to support these today, but I am concerned about unintended consequences of this. I know that the EAC, Alberta Federation for the Arts, yeah, I'm channeling you, Councillor Mackay, in my unintended consequences. CARFAX, so the federal kind of arts organization, and organizations in Calgary, Vancouver, all over the place, have really stepped up in terms of support for artists specifically. There is still a lot going on with artists. So really, if we hear from our artists that these grants are still needed to kind of support them through this, there are still programs available online for our artists to kind of keep engaged with their professions. So if we are hearing that this is a problem, delaying these grants, I'd certainly support kind of revisiting this. So just to throw that out there. And then, you know, on the big issue, I'm stuck at home with kids, and it's hard, but it's also been amazing seeing how creative they are in staying active and engaged really in their day-to-day. I had one kid out this morning, I think from like 8 to 9 this morning. He found 90 worms, which he located into our garden. And so there is so much for kids to do out there, even though some of our favorite activities aren't available right now. I've also been so kind of, it's warmed my heart to seeing what other community members are doing kind of in this bizarre time, and in dealing with restrictions. I know that, I think there was one family in Lacombe Park, I think, who put up the silly walk signs. You're entering a silly walk area. So for people walking past their home to do a silly walk as they're walking down the sidewalk. There's so many exciting things happening in the community, and it's been wonderful to see. But we do want to get things open as quickly as possible, and this will help us do that. Thank you.
Call for the vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's unanimous. All right, Council, you have choices now. So that was 7.4 done. Natalie pulled 7.5 off just with a quick question about public engagement. We have 8.1 was on consent. We have Councillor Hughes' motion, and then we go in camera. Do we need a full half hour for supper, or would you like to try to get these few items out of the way and then call it a night and have a quiet supper with your families? Okay. So I'm going to go on to 7.5, the time extension request. I'm just going to throw the floor right to you, Natalie, what your question was.
Thank you. So my question is about, so it's being delayed because public engagement is challenging right now, which is fair. I guess my question is that if restrictions in the fall are still such that we can't have 100 people in a room, are we going to be turning to kind of like what we did for the skateboard presentation, which, to be honest, it seems that we have better engagement with these online platforms than I've personally ever seen at an in-person session. So if you could comment on that.
To Councillor Jory.
Go ahead, Donnie.
Through the chair to Councillor Jory, yes, the short answer is yes, that's what we are contemplating. And Sharon's team is working on the package to get us there. Right now, the resources are constrained internally as well. That's another reason. So online platform is what is under consideration now to get us ready for an August, September timeframe of engagement. What we are thinking of is a specific town hall style online or a smaller focus group that allows us to have the engagement pieces, and also an online survey. Any of these or a combination of this is what is under consideration now. Nothing has been finalized, so we are working through the details.
That's fantastic. I was a bit confused about it. It sounds like it's resources. It's a few different things that the delay is for. So that's great. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna let you make the motion, Councillor Jolly, even though I said you didn't have to do any more tonight. You pulled it. You got it.
No, that's okay. That deadline extension for the following item be approved. Time extension request traffic bylaw 18/20/2005 amendments be extended to January 2021.
Sorry, I didn't actually ask council if anyone else had any questions. Are we good with where we're at? Okay, anything else to add, Councillor Jolly? Okay, call for the vote. Passes unanimously. Yeah, I did actually tell Kevin today how great the public engagement was on the skateboard park, and how the recording of that has made it easy to now share to a broader audience. So I think that's something we probably will adopt in the future. All right. Okay, so 8.1, let me just get to it. So the motions that were approved on consent was that bylaw 10/2020 being amendment 175 to the land use bylaw be read a first time, and that the public hearing on bylaw 10/2020 be scheduled for June 1st, 2020. So public hearing scheduled. Councillor Hughes, can I get you to read your council motion to the record, and then we will open it up for questions?
Mayor Heron, I'm not sure I'm going to bring it forward. I had a couple questions first.
Okay.
So, Mr. Lafleur, nowhere in my motion did I say that I wanted to only evaluate the administrative aspects. So I'm not sure how why the background is interpreting it to be that.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, we're interpreting that way because it's I guess it's the fundamental division between what administration does and what council does. We don't believe as administration, and certainly if either the CAO or DCAO wants to weigh in on this, we don't believe it's our place to give you our view of the effectiveness of a structure from a governance point of view. That's your job. That's not our job. But we certainly can and will, as we've said in the background, or will facilitate anything we can to help you do that, including a workshop, for example. And we'll certainly evaluate, if this motion passes, we'll certainly evaluate the committee structure from an administrative point of view, by which we mean, just in case anyone is not clear about that, how well does it work in terms of getting the most efficient use of staff time, of getting matters to council quickly and in an intelligible way, that sort of thing, the administrative aspects of it. But yes, you're correct. Your motion did not specifically break that out, but we're interpreting that way because we don't believe it's administration's place to evaluate the effectiveness of a structure as a governance structure.
So we're having a review at the end of 2021. That would be a review of governance structure.
And that would be
how would I
council's
have
review.
to word this differently?
That would be council's review at the end of 2020 or in the third quarter. Council would get together and you as a group would determine, are you governing the city in the best possible way under this structure?
So would it have to be that a council review the effectiveness? Is that what the wording would have to be to interpret it that way?
Sorry, I'm not quite, are you talking about the one that's in your motion now or the one
Yes.
to come in 2021?
The one because the reason I put this motion forward was because when I had a motion earlier, you stated incorrectly at the time that we were already going to have a review before the end of Q3 of 2020. And so I said, okay, if that's not the case, let's do a review before the end of 2020. Now the motion says, nope, it's only gonna be an administrative review if you do it. And we have a mandated review for the end of 2021. So we couldn't do the same review in 2021 and 2020. Like, that's the intention of the motion, was to do it, because you had said that your interpretation was that we were gonna have this review this year. And then that wasn't the case. So I'm trying to figure out here what's going on.
Okay, so I did apologize before for misstating, and I'll apologize again. I misstated some months ago when this came up. I'm sorry. Okay, the only thing that's in the bylaws now is a review of the overall committee structure just in time for the election in the fall of 2021. And that would, I would think that would clearly be council reviewing it, because it was council's decision to create this mechanism. And what's happening now, if council as a whole listening to this exchange wants to have a council review now of the governance structure called the standing committees, that's fine. It's just that I didn't read that into your motion.
The other question I had was, when this was all brought forward, the questions we had around like unknowns, such as the RMR budget, you know, and then it was stated, well, we could have a special council meeting. So this isn't specific to you, but to anybody in agenda committee wants to answer. And then when I look at the going forward meetings, I realized the one for next week was canceled, but it appeared the RMR budget was now going to be completely debated by now 4 members of council. And while it might be related to infrastructure, this is also a budget document, which you would think would involve the entire council. So I'm trying to figure out what the process was here, other than just sheer convenience, that we are having RMR budgets that are being processed by half of council. Because as a council member, I could make a motion at the committee level to make a change.
Councillor Hughes,
Like, I'm just, who decided to do that?
the RMR budget will come to council, just like everything in committees come to council.
But motions at the committee level will only be discussed and debated by 4 members of council. So
you can talk to any member of a committee you're not on, and they can make the motion for you. You can suggest it. I've made suggestions and people have taken them and made motions. No one
I would
does.
just think a budget document would be done by all of council.
It will be done.
not-
It will be absolutely debated by all of council.
So we're having a special meeting for that?
There's no decision-making authority at committee.
You can make the same argument for the entire budget document then in November, that we're debating it at council in December by the approval of doing the whole thing. So I really thought that this would at least be including all of council would have a debate during budget at committee level, and I'm not seeing that. And so, I mean, I just, okay. So in light of the fact that I doubt that this is going to materialize to be anything different, and I think that even if this motion passes, that I'm probably just going to have 6 opinions saying it's going wonderful anyway. And so I don't want to waste everyone's time on an administrative review on this, but I do want to be clear that I would like to have an RMR budget actually reflect all of council in the debate of making changes and amendments, and not have to make them after the fact. Because when I saw that, that was extremely disappointing. So I'm just not going to bring forward the motion right now. I'll let you know if I change my mind, but asking to have a review for Q1 when we're going to do it again in Q3 is, and then having it be based on administration, not based on just doing what was said was going to happen in 2020 anyway. I just feel like I'm patting my head against the wall. So I just won't bring it forward.
All right. Okay, we do have agenda item 11 is information requests, notice of motions and announcements. Does anyone have any? See no hands going up. I'm moving on. Oh, Councillor Jolly, sorry, did I miss you?
No, I'm just wondering, usually in about April of every year, we look over service levels, and I realize this year has been super weird in terms of when we're going to take a look at that. So do we have an idea of when we'll be looking at that this
So we'll discuss that with agenda planning, and I'll talk to administration. You're correct. Normally we bring that forward in March or April of every year to kick off the budgeting process, so to speak, for the upcoming year. So
This year's a little bit weird, so I understand why it
yeah,
wasn't done. But
so I think the intent would be there, and we're implementing the priority-based budgeting this year, which is based on the service levels, but service levels could be an upcoming discussion here by all means with the current challenges we face, and do we want to keep those service levels and that sort of thing. So it will be coming, yes.
okay, thank you. I look forward to that.
All right, anything else? Good question. All right, we need a motion to go in camera. I'm going to pick on some of Councillor Broadhand.
Okay, that council move in camera to have confidential dialogue with the chief administrative officer pursuant to section 24(1)(a) of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Act. Advice, proposals, recommendations, analysis, or policy options be developed by or for council, and 2, that the details of the in-camera discussion remain confidential pursuant to section 153(e) of the Municipal Government Act.
We're only voting on the
1.
Yeah.
Did I go too far again?
No, that's okay. It's all right. We're just voting on 1. And before we accept that and make a motion, Mr. LaFleur, I just want to be clear. So, we did have a quick conversation before the meeting about keeping the Zoom open to then go into a Teams meeting, which is considered more secure by IT, but to come back to Zoom. So are you saying for today, we're okay with making a motion at Teams, which would really be, we don't even make a motion to adjourn, I just declare adjournment.
Okay, in theory, to be strictly according to the MGA, you should come out of the Zoom meeting out of the Teams meeting and go into the Zoom meeting, because the MGA says you have to do whatever you're doing once you've come out of camera in a way that everyone can see what you're doing. However, that said, we do not anticipate, as I understand, any substantive motions or business, just simply a motion to adjourn. And if that's the case, I see no harm in doing that on the Teams platform for today. And we'll talk with council members afterwards about getting people trained to kind of do that on their own in the future.
I'm sure I could figure it out. I'm sure Kevin can as well.
Yeah, it's not difficult.
Know it too for when we're having council dialogue. So, Councillor Hanson.
Thanks. So could you just note that in the minutes that no decisions were made in camera and the meeting was adjourned?
We would not do that because you're not allowed to do that anyway under the MGA. So I wouldn't want to single out this meeting as saying no decisions were made in camera, because that might imply that at other meetings they were.
Oh, okay. So, well, no, I guess yeah, just trying to figure out a way to let the public know that they didn't miss anything, basically.
Yeah, what we would do is we'd make a notation in the minutes that the motion to adjourn occurred on a Teams platform that was not accessible to the public, but that's all it was, strictly a motion to adjourn. We'll make that motion, or we'll make that notation.
Okay, great. Good idea. All right. Okay, so Councillor Broadhead's read the motion into the record. I accept it. I don't think we need debate on going camera. Do you want to debate, anyone? Called for the vote. All right, that's unanimous. So we can actually hang up from Zoom. We'll leave this one and I will see you in Teams momentarily.